Chapter 80. You're right, this girl's teeth are really powerful. Lu Yutong raised her left hand and saw that her palm and elbow were both wrapped in bandages. It was obvious that she had been bitten. Even Ling Han had been accidentally bitten before, so it was clear that the little girl's sneak attack skills were impressive. More importantly, if one hadn't suffered, who would have thought that her teeth could be so sharp? This girl is definitely born in the year of the dog. Ling Han shook his head. Much more powerful than a dog, born in the year of the tiger. Lu Yutong had suffered before, and shook her head with lingering fear. The first time, she had indeed been careless, but the second time, she had still been bitten even though she was on guard. It was enough to show how terrifying the wild girl was. Of course, this was also because she didn't want to hurt the other, or else no matter how sharp her teeth were, she would have been killed with a single slap. Where did she come from? Lu Yutong asked curiously. She's a savage, raised by a tiger. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Ling Han squatted in front of the wild girl and stretched out his hand to tease her. Girl, you probably don't have a name, so I'll give you one. Hoo. The wild girl kept opening and closing her small mouth, and her teeth made a loud noise as she chased after Ling Han's finger to bite. You were raised by a tiger, so I'll call you Hu Niu. Ling Han said with a smile, then turned his head to ask Lu Yutong, does she have any birthmarks on her body? In the future, we can also help her find her birth parents. There really is. Lu Yutong nodded. There's a very strange mark on her ankle. I can't tell if it's natural, or if it was made after she was born. Ling Han lifted the blanket, and there was indeed a mark on the little girl's left ankle. It was about the size of a copper coin, and the pattern was very complicated. He really couldn't tell what it represented. Normally, such a complicated mark should have been made after birth, but there was no trace of the mark at all, and it seemed like it was natural. It was very strange. What do you plan to do with Hu Niu? Lu Yutong asked. She had already developed feelings for this little girl. This little girl only thinks of herself as a wild beast now. If the arrangements are not appropriate, she will definitely cause trouble. Ling Han nodded and said, let her follow us for now. We'll decide what to do after she regains her intelligence. Hu Niu didn't think of herself as a human at all. She was more like a wild cat or a small tiger cub. If clothes were put on her, she would directly tear them off. If she wasn't tied up, she was definitely more agile than a monkey, and what gave Ling Han even more of a headache was that she didn't eat cooked meat. Whether it was roasted meat or boiled meat, she didn't touch it at all. Instead, she stared at Ling Han's neck with a murderous look in her eyes. Clearly, she was more than happy to eat this feast. To get rid of her wild nature, the first step was to change her eating habits. Ling Han began to eat the roasted meat in front of the little girl, then placed the piece of meat in front of her and retreated. Hu Niu endured and didn't move, but after a long while, her stomach began to growl, and her eyes became even more ferocious. However, she still endured and didn't eat. It wasn't until late at night that she finally couldn't bear it anymore, wriggled her body, and ate the roasted meat. Both her hands and feet were tied, so she could only wriggle like a worm. Her appetite was shockingly good, and such a large roasted pig's leg was quickly devoured by her. The little girl licked her lips as if she hadn't had enough, and the expression on her face was very strange, because she had never eaten such delicious meat before. On the second day, Ling Han continued to entertain others, and on the fourth day, Li Hao and the other old friends finally had the chance to meet with him. I really never thought that you would actually be able to obtain first place. That's right, really awesome, too amazing. I'm even more envious of Li Hao. He will soon be able to enter into Huyang University, and with Big Brother Ling's protection, he won't have to worry about being bullied by strangers in unfamiliar places. Lu Dong and the others spoke one after another as they pushed wine cups around. Their status was low, and they could only wait until the crowd had almost dispersed before they dared to gather with Ling Han. Today, they naturally had to get Ling Han drunk no matter what. However, halfway through the drinks, Chen Pengju revealed a look of hesitation. After a long while, he said, I might have gotten myself into big trouble. What is it? Everyone asked. Chen Pengju gritted his teeth, and said, after returning from Balance Mountain, there was one time when I was drinking with one of my clansmen. I drank too much, and I think I mentioned something about Hang Zhan. What? Li Hao and the others all stood up at the same time, their faces turning deathly pale. Hang Zhan was the grandson of the seventh elder of Stone Wolf sect, and these days, Stone Wolf sect had been searching for the murderer. If the news was leaked, then it would definitely attract the attention of that seventh elder of Stone Wolf sect. A powerful warrior of gushing spring tear. However, Ling Han did not take it too seriously. It was not as if he did not have the help of a gushing spring tear martial artist. Moreover, Stone Wolf sect should know that there were 3 black-grade alchemists standing behind him, so they would definitely not dare to act rashly. Only that seventh elder could possibly go crazy and act rashly. After all, the one who died was his own grandson, and with his temperament, if he was fierce and hot-tempered, then it was indeed possible that he would come to kill them. Did you tell him or not? Lu Dong asked anxiously. Guo Rock Town was under the jurisdiction of Stone Wolf sect, and the seventh elder had a good reason to act. Even if he massacred their clans, the royal house of the De Yuan king would at most give some verbal punishment. After all, this was a world where the strong were revered. I really can't remember. I was really too drunk that day, Chen Pengju said with a long face. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, if that person from Stone Wolf sect really comes to kill his way to your clan, then tell him the truth and tell him to come find me. No, Big Brother Ling, we will definitely not betray you. That's right, how could we be so disloyal? Lu Dong and the others all shook their heads. As for whether they were speaking the truth or not, and how many of them were speaking the truth, that was another matter altogether. Ling Han smiled and said, no matter, this is the truth anyway. Moreover, I have the ability to protect myself, so I do not fear that seventh elder. On the other hand, I cannot guarantee your safety, so just listen to me and tell me the truth. Seeing that he was so insistent, Lu Dong and the others could only nod, hoping that Chen Pengju had not gone back on his word after drinking. That way, everything would be fine. With something weighing on their minds, the atmosphere became very oppressive. Very soon, the banquet was over, and everyone returned to their own homes. When Ling Han returned to Tianyi, he saw that Lu Yutong was teaching Hunyou how to speak, but the wild little girl was extremely ferocious and did not pay any attention to her at all. She only continued to bare her teeth and roar, looking very much like a little tiger. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, you have to grasp her weakness. Doesn't the little girl like to eat? You have to use food as a reward. If she performs well, give it to her, and let her slowly learn to be obedient. Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at him, and said in annoyance, do you really think she is raising kittens and puppies? This little girl is much fiercer than kittens and puppies. Ling Han said, clicking his tongue. He stretched out his hand to pat Hunyou's head, and the little girl immediately bit him. Thankfully, he withdrew his hand quickly. Knock, knock, knock. Ling Han and Lu Yutong turned around at the same time, and saw an alchemy apprentice standing at the door. He said, young Master Ling, there is someone outside who claims to be from the Ling family of Grey Cloud Town. He has an urgent matter and wishes to see you. Oh. Ling Han walked out. What was the matter? His father had just returned, so it shouldn't be anything serious. Could it be the seventh elder of Stone Wolf sect? He was shocked, and hurriedly broke into a run. Seeing this, Lu Yutong also left Hunyou behind and chased after him. Chapter 81. Let's go back a few days. Grey Cloud Town, Qing family. A powerful aura suddenly spread out from the deepest part of the Qing family's mansion. It was extremely terrifying, and even a ninth-layer poly-elite like Cheng Wenkuan felt a strong sense of fear from the depths of his heart. But Cheng Wen-kun did not feel the slightest bit nervous. A look of wild joy appeared on his face, and he actually started dancing with joy. Third uncle has broken through. Ha ha ha, third uncle has broken through. Ling family, you guys were so arrogant before, but you would never have thought that my third uncle has been in seclusion all this time to break through to gushing spring tear. His expression suddenly became stern, and he said, from today onwards, there will no longer be a Ling family in Grey Cloud Town. Ha 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 ha. A long laugh rang out, and a tall and thin old man walked into the main hall, his body exuding a terrifying wave of power. This was because he had just broken through, and could not completely control his power yet. He was Cheng Wen-kun's third uncle, Cheng Ji-yu. He was a martial arts fanatic, and had been the top elite of the Cheng family for more than 10 years. However, he had no interest in the power of the family, and had always been in seclusion to break through to gushing spring tear. Even many members of the Cheng family thought that he had died long ago. And his hard work had paid off, as he had successfully broken through to gushing spring tear. This was the strongest battle prowess in Grey Cloud Town, and could defeat all opponents. Greetings, third uncle, congratulations. Cheng Wen-kun half knelt on the ground, his face filled with wild joy. Stand up. Cheng Ji-yu raised his hand, his eyes turned, and he said, call Xiao Yuan and the others over. I haven't seen them for many years. Third uncle, Xiao Yuan is already dead. Cheng Wen-kun said sorrowfully. What? Cheng Ji-yu suddenly slammed the table. Peng, this table made of fine sandalwood instantly turned into dust. His eyes widened in anger, and he said, who killed my grandson? Cheng Xiaoyuan was Cheng Ji-yu's own grandson, and had inherited his talent, which was why he was accepted as a disciple by Stone Wolf sect. Cheng Shuang and Cheng Xiang did not have this qualification. The little bastard of the Ling family, Ling Han. Cheng Wen-kun immediately said. Pa! Cheng Ji-yu raised his hand and brought it down, giving Cheng Wen-kun a slap on the face. He scoffed and said, then what are you still sitting here for? Why didn't you bring that little bastard's head to see me? Cheng Wen-kun did not even dare to show the slightest bit of temper. In front of a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear, he could not even block a single finger. He hurriedly knelt down and said, how could Wen-kun not want to take revenge for Xiao Yuan? It's just that he has an elder from Stone Wolf sect backing him up. I can't touch him. An elder of Stone Wolf sect. Cheng Ji-yu's eyes narrowed slightly. The elders of Stone Wolf sect were all in gushing spring tier, and he had just broken through to this tier. No matter which one he fought, he would not be a match for them. However, he immediately snorted and said, that little bastard only flattered that elder at most. Even if I killed him, that elder wouldn't have a falling out with me. Let's go, immediately follow me to slaughter our way to the Ling family. He dared to kill my grandson, so I'm going to slaughter every single member of the Ling family. Cheng Wen-kun was naturally overjoyed. He was afraid that Cheng Ji-yu would shrink back. Thankfully, Cheng Xiaoyuan was dead, which made Cheng Ji-yu so furious that he was not even afraid of an elder of Stone Wolf sect. The Cheng family moved out in force, all of them brimming with killing intent as they headed towards the Ling family. Their ostentatious behavior naturally alerted the smaller clans in the town, who all came out to watch. What's going on with the Cheng family? Could it be that they're going to start a war with some clan? Aside from the Ling family, which other clan is worthy of the Cheng family moving out in such a grand manner? That can't be, the Ling family's power is not inferior to the Cheng family at all. A war between the two clans would only result in both sides suffering heavy losses. The Cheng family wouldn't be so stupid, would they? That's not right, that's not right. Don't you know that the Cheng family is having a hard time now? I've heard that their economic lifeline has suffered a full-scale attack from the Ling family, and now they can't even afford to pay the salaries of their servants. Yes, I've heard that too. These days, a great many servants and guards of the Cheng family have secretly run away. The situation is actually that bad? No wonder the Qing family is putting their lives on the line. Otherwise, they would be destroyed by the Ling family in future. If they put their lives on the line now, at least they still have a chance of winning. Chen Wenkuan heard the discussions of these people, and could not help but smirk coldly. How could it be possible to put their lives on the line? They now had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear keeping watch, and this time, they were going to wipe out the Ling family. Putting their lives on the line, only the Ling family needed to put their lives on the line, but it was completely useless. They would only be suppressed by a single finger of a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear. The Qing family advanced majestically, and the townspeople followed behind them to watch the show. This was a war between two great clans, and if they missed it, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. Very soon, they came from the east side of the town to the west side, where the Ling family resided. With such a big battle formation, it naturally alerted the Ling family. Ling Dongxing just happened to return, and immediately led the crowd out. Head of the Ling family, long time no see. Chen Wenkuan pressed his hand down, and all the members of the Qing family stopped. He smiled at Ling Dongxing, filled with pride, because this old rival of his would very soon kneel down and submit in front of him. Ling Dongxing frowned. This was not a friendly visit. He raised his voice and said, "Brother Cheng has brought so many people here, are you here to demonstrate your might?" Ha 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 ha. Chen Wenkuan laughed loudly, then stopped abruptly, and said darkly, "That's right, I'm here today to demonstrate my might. Ling Dongxing, quickly order your clansmen to surrender, and I can consider killing a few less." "Chen Wenkuan, have you gone senile?" Ling Dongxing said coldly. This was really a great joke. "You think I'm joking?" Chen Wenkuan laughed coldly. "Aren't you?" Ling Dongxing asked in return. "Of course not." A cold voice sounded, and a tall and skinny elder walked out of the crowd, passing by Chen Wenkuan, his face full of killing intent. Who is this old man? The surrounding crowd was all curious. The Qing family has someone like this. His status is not lower than Chen Wenkuan's. I remember now, he's Qing Jiyu. An elder suddenly exclaimed. Everyone said he was dead, I didn't expect him to still be alive. Ling Dongxing naturally recognized Qing Jiyu, even though he was much older now. He cupped his hands, showing respect to the other party for being a generation older than him. But now that the dignity of both clans was at stake, he naturally could not give in. He said, "If the Qing family insists on fighting, there is no one in the Ling family who is afraid of death." "Heng, you think you're worthy of being my Qing family's enemy?" Qing Jiyu stretched out his hand, and pressed down towards Ling Dongxing. "I'll suppress you first. You're going too far." Ling Dongxing raised his palm to counterattack. He had been known as the #1 genius of Grey Cloud Town, so his abilities were naturally extraordinary. As his palms moved, over 10 palm prints were formed, and the speed of his attacks was extremely fast. A firefly is not worthy of competing with the sun and moon. Qing Jiyu pointed out with a finger, and actually formed a giant palm the size of a millstone, pressing down towards Ling Dongxing. Origin power taking form, gushing spring tear. Ling Dongxing exclaimed in shock, his face instantly turning pale. He finally understood where the confidence of the Qing family came from. Qing Jiyu had actually broken through to gushing spring tear. Reading on one's phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 82. The large hand of origin power slammed down and suppressed Ling Dongxing without any suspense, directly sealing his dantian. Now, his power was not much stronger than a normal person's. Ha 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 ha. Chen Wenkuan laughed loudly, feeling extremely comfortable and happy. Ever since he awakened his spirit base and started cultivating, he had always compared himself to Ling Dongxing, but he was always suppressed by Ling Dongxing, and could only be the second in line. Thankfully, Ling Dongxing had not broken through to gushing spring tear, which gave him a sliver of hope. Now, this formidable opponent that had been pressing down on him was so easily suppressed. How could he not be excited, but he was also very shocked. Gushing spring tear was too strong. Qing Jiyu had just broken through, but Ling Dongxing was not even a match for him. Capture them all. Whoever dares to resist, kill without mercy, he said coldly. With a wave of his hand, the Qing family martial artists behind him immediately charged out, charging towards the Ling family with an imposing manner. On the other hand, because the clan head of the Ling family was restrained, and the other side had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear, their morale naturally plummeted, and they could not put up any effective resistance. A few poly-tier clansmen still wanted to escape, but Qing Jiyu easily caught up to them and beat them half to death with a single palm strike. I never thought that the Qing family actually had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear. He should have just broken through, or else he wouldn't have waited until now to counterattack. The wheel of fortune really changes in 30 years. Who would have thought that when the Qing family was about to be forced into a desperate situation, they would come up with such a great comeback? With the temperament of the Qing family, I'm afraid no one from the Ling family will be able to escape with their lives. In future, the Qing family will have the final say in the town. Our days will probably not be easy. While everyone was shocked by Qing Jiyu's power, they could not help but shake their heads and sigh. The members of the Qing family were all arrogant and domineering. In future, they would be the dominant family, and the townspeople would not have good days. In less than half an hour, almost all the members of the Ling family were captured. Only a few members who were doing business outside were lucky enough to escape. Where's Ling Han? Qing Jiyu came to stand in front of Ling Dongxing, his eyes filled with killing intent. He had sent people to search for Ling Han, but they had not found him anywhere. Ha 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 ha. Ling Dongxing laughed. My son has been accepted as a disciple by Huyang University. If you dare to touch him, you will be the enemy of Rain Country royalty. Chen Wenkuan walked over and said, your useless son can also enter Huyang University. Who are you trying to fool? Ling Dongxing spat on the ground and said, not only has my son entered Huyang University, he is also the champion of this year's De Yuan tournament. In future, he will at least reach the spiritual ocean tier. Just you wait. Bullshit. Chen Wenkuan snorted. With just your son, you want to win first place in the De Yuan tournament? Ling Dongxing, you really know how to indulge in fantasy, actually thinking of using such ridiculous words to fool us. Actually, Chen Wenkuan still believed that Ling Han could enter Huyang University. After all, Qing Xiao Yuan had been defeated by Ling Han. But to say that Ling Han could win first place, that would really be the biggest joke in the world. This year's De Yuan tournament was a gathering of geniuses. There were powerful warriors like the Fourth Prince and Jin Wuji, as well as new talents like Bailey Tingyun and Xia Zhongguang. How could Ling Han possibly win? So what if he has been accepted by Huyang University? As long as he does not enter Huyang University, he is not a disciple of Huyang University. Chen Wenkuan was filled with killing intent. He then turned to Qing Jiyu and said, Third uncle, why don't we hang them all at the entrance of the town, and when that little beast Ling Han returns, we can kill them all. Alright, let's do that. I will dig out that little bastard Ling Han's heart and lungs in front of him, and let him have a taste of losing a descendant. Qing Jiyu snorted coldly. We only need to leave a dozen or so alive, and kill the rest. Chen Wenkuan said darkly. Qing Wenkuan, don't you dare. Ling Dongxing roared fiercely. The Ling family alone had several hundred clansmen, and adding on the servants, guards and other personnel who did not share the same surname, the total number had reached more than 1,000. Now that there were only a dozen or so left alive, how many people would he have to kill? Why wouldn't I dare? Chen Wenkuan laughed coldly. This was to establish his might, to use the lives of the Ling family as a sacrifice, to let the people of Grey Cloud Town know that this was the consequence of going against the Qing family. Kill them! He shouted loudly. Pu, Pu, one after another, heads were chopped off. Blood flowed like a river, and corpses littered the ground. Not every member of the Ling family was unafraid of death. Many begged for mercy, but it was useless. The Qing family was determined to annihilate the Ling family, and they did not accept any surrender at all. They only killed, turning the entire Ling family into a cave of death. Ling Dongxing's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. These were all members of the Ling family, and as the head of the family, how could his heart not bleed? But he was more worried about his son. What if Ling Han returned, and he fell into the hands of the Qing family? Though Ling Han was on friendly terms with many black-grade alchemists, the problem was, would the Qing family believe him? Furthermore, the news that Ling Han had obtained the first place in the De Yuan tournament had not yet spread, so the Qing family would naturally not have any qualms. If his son died, then even if he died, how would he have the face to see his wife? His heart was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. The remaining 10 or so members of the Ling family were dragged to the eastern entrance of the town. Here, 10 or so short wooden stakes had been temporarily erected. Ling Dongxing and the others Dantian had all been sealed, and they were all kneeling on the ground, their hands and feet tied behind their backs to the wooden stakes. Woo, 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 big brother Xiong. Ling Zixian cried loudly. She was one of the few who were still alive, but she might not be the lucky one. Pa! One of the Qing family members slapped her across the face, and shouted, "Don't cry." But Ling Zixian cried even louder, causing him to be enraged, and he drew the saber from his waist. Forget it, forget it. Someone on the side advised. Perhaps it was because Ling Zixian was too young that he had become addicted to her. Just let her cry all she wants, and use it as a deterrent. This is the result of going against our Qing family. Hee hee. What bullshit, clan head, isn't he still being stepped on by my foot? One of them stepped on Ling Dongxing's head, and even deliberately smeared the dirt from the bottom of his shoe onto Ling Dongxing's face, causing Ling Dongxing to tremble in anger. Ha ha ha, so what if he's at the 9th layer of poly? Now, he can even easily step on me, who is only at the 6th layer of body refining tier. The Ling family is finished. Now, Grey Cloud Town belongs to our Qing family. A night had passed, and the dozen or so members of the Ling family were all shivering from the bitter cold. Frost had formed on their hair, and they had not had any water or rice for almost a day, causing their stomachs to rumble with hunger. Cheng Wenkuan had appeared, and he wanted to see his archenemy lose hope bit by bit. Finally, when his only son died in front of him, he would lose all hope. At that time, he would kill Ling Dongxing, and put an end to the competition between the two of them that had lasted for over 30 years. Ling Dongxing, do you regret it now? He mocked and ridiculed, and only left after he had said enough. The next day, he appeared on time, and continued to tease this former rival of his. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Ling Dongxing and the dozen or so others were only left with half of their lives. They had not eaten for 3 whole days, and if not for the fact that they had been given some water, they would definitely have died from dehydration. But now, they were also extremely weak, and they did not even have the strength to curse. Report. Someone ran over and half-knelt. Reporting to Lord Clan Head, traces of Ling Han have been discovered. He is currently 50 kilometers away from the town. Ha 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 ha. Cheng Wenkuan was startled at first, and then he laughed loudly. He waved his hand and said, "Quickly go and get third uncle. He will be able to take revenge soon." Chapter 83. Ha 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 ha, theft is a shameless and evil act in the first place, what more when it involves the third imperial prince. Wei He-luo could not help but laugh loudly. At that time, even if the academy did not want to pursue the matter, now that it involved the imperial clan, even Wu Songlin's face would not be of any use. There was no small matter in the imperial clan. Ling Han dared to steal something belonging to the third imperial prince. That was definitely a dead end. However, there has to be a reason, right? Otherwise, why would the thief steal this thing? Wei Hidong very quickly stopped laughing, and asked Feng Luo. Feng Luo laughed mischievously, and said, "This is a keepsake of the third imperial prince, and is only gifted to an extremely few people. Holding such a keepsake means that one is a close friend of the third imperial prince. Not only is it a symbol of one's identity and status, all the expenses incurred in the various restaurants and inns of the imperial city can be recorded, and the third imperial prince will be responsible for paying." Yeah. Wei Hilu looked envious. Although he was a genius alchemist, he had not obtained the third imperial prince's favor, and was thus gifted with such a keepsake. Now, a profligate young master actually had one in his possession, so how could he not be envious? Feng Luo smiled proudly. This was something that Feng Yan had specially gifted to him, in case he caused trouble in the imperial city. With the keepsake of the third imperial prince, everyone would have to give him some face. He patted Wei Hili's shoulder, and said, "Young Master Wei, I'll leave the matter of framing him to you." Wei Hilu looked like he was in a difficult position. He only knew how to concoct alchemical pills, and he only knew how to eat, drink, and play around. However, he had never done something like framing someone before. Moreover, in the past, there were too many people who wanted to suck up to him. He only needed to open his mouth, and there would naturally be people who would do it for him. There was no need for him to do it himself. What? You're not willing? Feng Luo laughed coldly. He pretended to put away the keepsake. Then forget it. I only wanted to help you vent your anger. Since you're not willing, I won't force you. Wait. Wei Hilu hurriedly called out. He gritted his teeth, and said, "I'll do it." His heart was filled with hatred. The reason why he had offended Ling Han was because he wanted to help Feng Luo vent his anger. But now, this guy actually said that he wanted to help him vent his anger. He was really turning his back on him. But after he had been abandoned by Wusong Lin, he was no longer the young Master Wei of the past. He was only a yellow-grade low-level alchemist, so did he have the right to stand against Feng Luo? Behind Feng Luo stood a genius of martial arts. Feng Luo was faintly showing signs of approaching the level of the third imperial prince, Ken Yi, and other peerless geniuses of his generation. His future was limitless, so how could a down-and-out alchemist like him compare to him? When one was under someone else's roof, he had no choice but to lower his head. If he rejected Feng Luo now, that would mean that he had cut off his only possible future. If he followed Wusong Lin, he might be able to leave Rain Country in future, and escape from Wusong Lin's shadow. He took the violet badge, and silently walked to Feng Luo's side. He stood with his hands by his side, and placed himself in a relatively lower position. Ha 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 ha. Feng Luo laughed loudly, his face filled with pride. Even his eldest brother would not have thought that he would actually be able to subdue a slightly talented alchemist. Who would still dare to say that he was a profligate young master? Try and subdue a yellow-grade alchemist. Wei Hilu lowered his head, his eyes filled with regret. But now that things had come to this, how could he still turn back? After a free meal, Qi Zhantai naturally returned to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while Ling Han brought Hunyo around for a while to buy some materials to set up an array. Only then did he return to the academy. He was not in a hurry to take the second star pill. Instead, he began to set up an array around the courtyard. This was an early warning array. Anyone who entered the courtyard would be alerted by the array, and would send out a warning that only he could receive. Even if he was not in the courtyard, there would still be some clues left behind, telling him that an outsider had intruded into this courtyard. There was nothing he could do about it. The materials he had on hand were limited, so he could only set up such a simple array. Otherwise, if it had been in his last life, even a powerful warrior of heaven tier might not have dared to barge into the array that he had set up. I'll just make do with it. I don't have any enemies right now anyways, he mumbled. If these words were heard by Lu Yutong, Qi Yongyi, and the others, they would definitely jump out to object. He actually dared to say that he didn't have any enemies. Wu Bo was one, Feng Yan was another, He Junchen was another, and so were Nangong Ji. These people were not to be trifled with, especially Wu Bo and Feng Yan. One was a young master of the direct line of descent of the Wu clan, while the other was a genius of martial arts who had the potential to become a king tier. If these two were not considered enemies, then who was? Unfortunately, they did not know that although Ling Han's current cultivation level was weak, deep in his bones was the pride of a powerful warrior of heaven tier. How could he possibly care about these small fries? Moreover, in his last life, his personality had been like this. He was incomparably proud, and would definitely not lower his head to anyone. This array was very simple, so it did not take Ling Han long to finish setting it up. Then, he began to take the second star pill to strengthen his divine sense. As far as Ling Han knew, there was no cultivation technique in this world that could strengthen one's divine sense. Only when one's cultivation level increased would one's divine sense correspondingly strengthen to the next level. This was a passive process. For example, when he had been in heaven tier in his last life, he only had to slightly wave his spiritual power, and he could even directly erase the soul of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. But he had always suspected that since the divine sense could be recovered through cultivation techniques, strengthened through alchemical pills and godly medicines, then it should also be possible to cultivate through cultivation techniques. It was just that there was no such cultivation technique in circulation now. This was not impossible. Because if he had not come from 10,000 years ago, how would he know that so many pill recipes had been lost in the passage of time? Obviously, a great many good things had disappeared in the course of history. It was so in this life, so could it be that his last life would not be an exception? A definite example was that during the last period of his last life, he had once walked into a great many ancient sites, and obtained some ancient pill recipes from them, which similarly belonged to the category that had been lost in the passage of time. Thus, many years ago, perhaps there had been cultivation techniques that could temper the divine sense. As he thought about this, he continued to absorb the medicinal effects of the second star pill. His whole body instantly felt incredibly comfortable, because his soul was responsible for all the sensations in his body. Now that his divine sense had become stronger, he naturally felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. One after another, he very soon swallowed all 7 second star pills. The power of my soul has almost doubled. Ling Han opened his eyes, and his gaze became even deeper, as if it was a bottomless pit, causing others to involuntarily sink into it. He smiled. This is the benefit of having a strong divine sense. I can use my divine sense to oppress my opponent, and this can be used as a special move. If others are not on guard, it is very possible that they will be instantly killed by me. The strength of my soul now should be equivalent to that of gushing spring tear. His smile involuntarily widened. This means that I will be able to cultivate at the speed of gushing spring tear's spiritual chi absorption. Added with my immortal grade spirit base, I'm afraid that even I would be shocked by the speed of my cultivation. Hurry up and reach gushing spring tear. Only when I reach gushing spring tear will I be able to cultivate black grade martial arts techniques. That is the true beginning of martial arts. Now, I have all the secret techniques in my arsenal, yet I am unable to use them. This kind of feeling is really terrible. There's a mouse that ran in. Chapter 84. Ta, 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 the sound of galloping hooves could be heard. Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan had arrived just a short while later, causing Lu Yutong to feel much more assured. She leapt off the horse and began to rescue Ling Dongxing and the others, so that Ling Han would not have to worry about anything. Father, eat this vitality protection pill. Ling Han took out a pill bottle, poured out a green pill, and fed it to Ling Dongxing. Ling Dongxing did not feel anything. Since it was given to him by his son, he would eat it. However, Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan were so shocked that their eyes were wide open. Vitality Protection Pill was also a lost pill, and its effects were even better than the reverse pill. Although the name of the reverse pill was very domineering, compared to the vitality protection pill, it was still a far cry. Both of them were yellow-grade high-level pills, but they were extremely difficult to concoct. Yu, Zhu Hexin, and Zhang Wei Shan, after obtaining the complete prescription, had not been able to concoct the reverse pill even after so many days, but Ling Han had immediately concocted the even more difficult vitality protection pill. How could the two of them not be so shocked that their eyes were wide open? Ling Han distributed the vitality protection pill to the remaining 10 or so members of the Ling family. This vitality protection pill was an improved version of the reverse pill that he had concocted in his previous life, so its effects were naturally much better. Big brother Han, De Xiong is dead, and father and mother are also dead, woo woo woo. Ling Zixian lay weakly in Ling Han's arms, sobbing. However, no tears came out of her eyes, because her tears had long since dried up. I will avenge De Xiong, I will avenge everyone. Ling Han caressed the little girl's back, and said, be good, Xian Xian. Sleep, sleep, you'll be fine. The little girl nodded. After these 4 days of suffering, she had long since reached her limit. She quickly fell asleep in Ling Han's arms. Ling Han handed the little girl over to Lu Yutong, then turned his gaze back to Cheng Wenkuan, his killing intent blazing. Although Hun Yo was tied up and lying on the horse's back, she had grown up with ferocious beasts, so she was very sensitive to killing intent. Instantly, she raised her head and let out a roar, looking extremely excited. How is that possible? How could you form 5 flashes of sword qi? Cheng Wenkuan struggled to get up from the ground. His nose had collapsed, his mouth was crooked, and his face was covered in blood. How do you want to die? Ling Han asked coldly. Do you want to be dismembered, or shot in the head? I'll give you a choice. Little bastard, don't get cocky. Even if you formed 5 flashes of sword qi, it's still useless. In front of absolute power, only death awaits you, shouted Cheng Wenkuan. When my 3rd uncle arrives, all of you will die. Ling Han shook his head, and said, hearing your words, I really thought I was facing a young profligate young master in his teens who only knows how to use the adults in his family to scare people. When the old thing arrives, I'll naturally chop off his dog head. Bullshit. Cheng Wenkuan screamed. He was once again kicked to the ground by Ling Han. He was extremely humiliated and furious. Being stepped on in the face by someone was the most humiliating thing, and the person who stepped on him was actually the son of his sworn enemy. It was fine that he could not win against Ling Dongxing, but even Ling Dongxing's son could step on his face. How could he endure this? At this time, the townspeople had also received the news and came out to watch the commotion. The people nearby had all arrived, and when they saw Ling Han majestically step on Cheng Wenkuan's face, everyone was petrified. Before Cheng Jiyu appeared, the publicly acknowledged strongest elites of Grey Cloud Town were Ling Dongxing and Cheng Wenkuan. They were both in the 9th layer of Pali, and were invincible. Now, this former strongest elite was actually stepped on by Ling Han. Who could believe their own eyes? This was once a famous piece of trash. Many disciples of Tsungyun College recalled what Lu Yutong had once said, after 3 months, everyone could only look up to Ling Han. As expected, he could even step on Cheng Wenkuan now, so who could not look up to him? But the problem was, the current strongest elite of Grey Cloud Town was Cheng Jiyu, an ultimate elite of Gushing Spring Tier. No matter how strong Ling Han was, could he be stronger than Gushing Spring Tier? It's over. Once Cheng Jiyu arrives, Ling Han will definitely be finished. AI, what a pity for such a genius. Otherwise, he might be able to become a powerful warrior of Spiritual Ocean Tier in the future. Spiritual Ocean Tier, you really dare to say that? That's as strong as the De Yuan King. Think about it, Ling Han is only 17 years old now, but he can already step on Cheng Wenkuan. How terrifying is his talent? That's true. Everyone whispered to each other. They all felt that Ling Han was completely unfavorable, that he had come back to die. The strength of gushing spring tear was deeply ingrained in everyone's bones, especially in a small place like Grey Cloud Town. That was a godlike existence. Hang! It was at this moment that a figure flew out from the town. His speed was extremely fast, so fast that even a galloping horse could not catch up. In just an instant, he had appeared nearby. It was Qing Jiyu. Little bastard, you are Ling Han, the evil thief who killed my grandson. Qing Jiyu glared at Ling Han, his eyes looking as if he wanted to eat him alive. I am Ling Han, and today will be the day you die. Ling Han retorted. Ha 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 ha, I am a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear, what right do you have to take my life? Qing Jiyu was in no hurry to attack. This was the main culprit who had killed his grandson, so he wanted to slowly torture this little bastard to death. What if we attack? Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan both stepped out at the same time. And who the hell are you two? Huh? Qing Jiyu was indifferent at first, but when his eyes swept over the two of them, his expression instantly changed and he exclaimed, gushing spring tear. Not only were they in gushing spring tear, but there were two of them. What? The townspeople all exclaimed in shock. These two unprepossessing old men were actually powerful warriors of gushing spring tear as well. Hiss, no wonder Ling Han dared to return. So he had invited a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear to help him. Qing Jiyu's expression instantly turned serious, and he no longer dared to underestimate them in the slightest. He said, fellow Taoists, this man has a grudge against me for killing my grandson. No matter what benefits he has promised you, I will give you double the amount. I hope that you will not interfere. Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan exchanged a look, and both laughed loudly. Double the amount? Who the hell are you? How many pill recipes do you have, and how much understanding do you have of alchemy? You actually dare to boast like this? Impudence. Young friend Ling's matter is our matter as well. Zhang Wei Shan spoke up. The one with the surname Cheng, if you surrender now, I can still plead with young friend Ling to grant you a quick death. Young friend Ling. Hiss. Everyone gritted their teeth and drew in a breath of cold air. Two powerful warriors of gushing spring tear actually addressed Ling Han as young friend, and they even looked as if they were going through thick and thin together. What kind of friendship was this? Thankfully, both Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan did not put on the badge of an alchemist. Otherwise, these townspeople would be even more shocked, because a black-grade low-level alchemist had a higher status than a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear. Must the two of you do this? Qing Jiyu asked darkly. He had just broken through to gushing spring tear, and his confidence was at its peak. Moreover, he definitely did not believe that two powerful warriors of gushing spring tear would risk their lives for the sake of Ling Han. No matter how he thought about it, he could not think of such a reason. Peng, 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 there was a cloud of dust in the distance, and a group of people was quickly approaching. Brother Ling, I've brought some people to lend you a hand. This group of people soon arrived near, and a young man leaped down from his horse, clasped his hands in greeting to Ling Han, and said. It was Bailey Tingyun. Chapter 85. Bailey Tingyun did not attract much attention, but the group of men dressed in the same attire behind him caused everyone to be shocked. Because there were two words embroidered on each of their chests, Bailey. Within the territory of De Yuan City, there was only one party that dared to use the name Bailey, and that was the Bailey sect. One of the four most powerful parties under the royal house of De Yuan. Pooh! Quite a number of people choked. Though they did not recognize Bailey Tingyun, since he was able to recruit so many disciples of the Bailey sect, his status would definitely not be low. Yet he addressed Ling Han as his brother, so what did that mean? Ling Han and the Bailey sect were on very good terms. Qing Jiyu's expression changed again. No matter how much confidence he did not think that he had the ability to stand against the Bailey sect. They had an elite in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, and even 100 of him would not be a match for them. His only hope now was that this seemingly awesome brat did not have a very high status in the Bailey sect. Before the first wave had subsided, another wave arose. Dust rose in the distance, and a group of people was quickly galloping over. "Ha, so Brother Bailey has arrived first." A young man leaped off his horse. It was Jin Wuji. He raised his clasped hands in greeting at Ling Han, and said, "Brother Ling, I've also brought some people from the Han clan to cheer for you. You actually dared to injure Uncle Ling. I'd like to see who would be so daring." He had already resolved his grudge with Ling Han, and their relationship was now quite good. Qing Jiyu could not help but humph, and said, "And who are you? Such arrogance! How dare you?" A guard of the Jin clan jumped out. "Are you blind? This is our third young master, Jin Wuji." Pooh! The townspeople's mood that had just recovered instantly turned into a great wave of shock. Who was Jin Wuji? He was the third young master of the Jin clan, and also the most talented member of the younger generation of the Jin clan. He had a very high chance of inheriting the position of clan head in the future. If that was the case, then could the Brother Bailey, that Jin Wuji spoke of, be Bailey Tingyun of the Bailey sect? Because the sect leader of the Bailey sect only had one son, and he should be about 16 or 17 years old. Hiss, it could be said that the two strongest forces of De Yuan City had both come, and they were not just any random person. One was the young sect leader, and the other was the future clan leader. Moreover, both of them were brothers with Ling Han. Impersonated? How could that be possible? Who would dare to impersonate these two people in De Yuan City? Qing Jiyu finally showed an expression of unease. Ling Han was currently protected by two great forces, and even if he could really take Ling Han's life amidst an army of 10,000, in the future, he would definitely be hunted down by these two great forces. For a moment, he was caught in a dilemma. Should he take revenge or give up? He did not realize that what happened today was not something that he could just give up. As early as when he attacked the Ling family, his fate had already been sealed. Death. Gallop, 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 galloped over from afar. The townsfolk were already numb. They wondered if another disciple of a super faction had come, right? Ha 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 ha, Brother Jean, Brother Bailey, you really came quickly. With a long laugh, Li Dongyu leapt off his horse and strode over. He said, "Brother Ling, if you need my Stone Wolf sect, just say the word." When he said this, everyone was greatly shocked. Although the Jin clan and the Bailey sect were powerful, they were still too far away from them. However, the Stone Wolf sect was the true ruler of this place. Ma Lang, who had come previously, had already caused everyone to be filled with dread. Now that this person was able to call Jin Wuji and Bailey Tingyun brothers, his status was definitely above Ma Lang's. Chen Wenkuan was about to cry. What was going on? Why did the super factions of De Yuan City come one after another, and they were all helping Ling Han? The Jin clan, the Bailey sect, the Stone Wolf sect. Any one of them would only need to lift a finger to exterminate the Qing family a dozen times over. Thank you, everyone. After I kill my enemies, I will drink with all of you. Ling Han cupped his hands and said, "You can help me exterminate the Qing family. I only want these two main culprits. Leave it to us." Jin Wuji and the other two readily agreed. Not to mention the fact that all three of them were working together, any one of their forces could easily exterminate the Qing family. No, no, no. Chen Wenkuan said, trembling, "You can't do this, you can't do this. When you were exterminating my Ling family, why were you so ruthless?" Ling Han asked darkly, "I have always been a fair person. If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. But if anyone dares to harm even a single hair on my family, I will return the favor 100-fold. Jin Wuji and the other two waved their hands, and led their men and left with a whistling sound. Without an elite warrior like Qing Jiyu standing guard, what was the Qing family? Stop! Qing Jiyu shouted loudly. He naturally could not watch as his clan was exterminated. However, he had just taken a step when he saw Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan leaping out at the same time, blocking him from the front and back. Tang, tang, tang. It was at this moment that more and more people rushed over. There were the small clans of De Yuan City, as well as the forces of other towns. Some even had elite warriors of Gushing Spring tier among their ranks. They came in waves, practically drowning Grey Cloud Town. This was too terrifying. Now, aside from the royal house of the De Yuan king, almost all the forces that could be ranked were here. These people had all come because of Ling Han. Since when had this trash of a young master actually become so young? Cheng Wenkuan's face was ashen. It seemed that the Cheng family would not be able to escape this calamity today. He hated himself for not killing Ling Dongxing. That way, he would at least be able to drag his mortal enemy down with him, and he would not be lonely on the road to the netherworld. Pa! Ling Han's foot landed heavily on Cheng Wenkuan's face. Old dog, even at this time, you still dare to harbor evil thoughts. Ha ha ha, so what if I die? There will still be the members of your Ling family to die with me. Cheng Wenkuan knew that it was impossible for him to escape death, so he might as well throw caution to the wind, glaring angrily at Ling Han. Pa! Ling Han's foot landed again, shattering all the teeth in Cheng Wenkuan's mouth. He was in so much pain that he flailed his arms and legs, but with Ling Han stepping on him, he could only continue to struggle on the ground. Brother Ling. A tall young man walked out from the crowd, his body exuding an astonishing aura. It was Qi Yongyi. We pay our respects to the fourth prince. The surrounding people all knelt down to pay their respects. Fourth prince. The people of Grey Cloud Town stared blankly for quite a while before they also knelt down to pay their respects, their hearts filled with shock. Now, all the factions of De Yuan City had gathered, and there was only one reason. Ling Han. What kind of magic did he actually possess? At this moment, Cheng Wenkuan had completely lost all hope. Even the royal house of the De Yuan king had come because of Ling Han, so what hope did the Cheng family still have? Are you all forcing me to put my life on the line? Cheng Jiyu shouted loudly, his eyes wide with rage. With the situation today, the Cheng family was destined to be annihilated. Since that was the case, he definitely had to escape with his life, and find a chance to kill off Ling Han in the future. Not just Ling Han, but also the surviving members of the Ling family. Only death awaits you. Zhu Hexian said coldly. Since Cheng Wen dared to harm his father, who was half his master, this caused the old man to be enraged. Chapter 86. Cheng Jiyu fought with his life on the line. He wanted to carve out a path of blood, and then return for revenge. Logically speaking, even if there were three of him, he would not be a match for either Zhu Hexian or Zhang Weishan, what more when the two of them joined forces, but a Gushing Spring tier warrior fighting with his life on the line was still quite terrifying. Even Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan did not dare to fight him head-on, and they did not want to be dragged down by him at all. Moreover, how long could he last if he fought with his life on the line? They only needed to delay him, and when he was done, Cheng Jiyu's battle prowess would naturally drop greatly, and it would be a piece of cake to deal with him then. Little bastard, you will definitely die, all of your Ling family will die. Cheng Wenkuan shouted harshly. As long as Cheng Jiyu managed to escape with his life, the Ling family was destined to be annihilated. Could it be that Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan would stay by the Ling family all day? Noisy. Ling Han humphed coldly, and stomped down with his foot. Pa! Cheng Wenkuan's entire head was crushed into a pulp, and a spray of blood gushed out. The headless body struggled for quite a while before it finally stopped. This scene caused everyone around to be speechless, thinking that this young man was really iron-blooded. It was impossible for him to kill someone, but what was frightening was that he was so callous, crushing a person's head with a single stomp, yet his expression did not change at all. It was too terrifying. This brat from the Ling family has the right to become a ruler. He does not show mercy to his enemies, and kills without mercy. That's right, those who are soft-hearted will not live long no matter how talented they are. But when I realized this, I was already in my early 30s, and this brat from the Ling family is only 17 years old now. Really incredible. Yet Hunyo's eyes lit up. She had the instincts of a wild beast, and could keenly sense the killing intent that Ling Han was exuding at this moment. This caused her to feel both fear and excitement, because she felt a sense of familiarity. Her body wriggled, and she really wanted to throw herself at Ling Han's side, but both her hands and feet were bound, so she could only struggle in vain. Although Ling Han had killed one of the main culprits, his anger did not subside. The pitiful state of his father and his clansmen lingered in his mind, causing his killing intent to burn even more intensely. He stared fixedly at Qing Jiyu. This was the other main culprit, and could also be considered the main culprit. Because if not for Qing Jiyu's existence, how would the Qing family have dared to make a move against the Ling family? He had to end this with his own hands. Get out of the way. He roared loudly, and shot out, charging towards Qing Jiyu. Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan were both shocked, and wanted to stop Ling Han so that he wouldn't be in danger. However, Ling Han shouted, "I want to take down this old dog with my own hands. Get out of my way." His expression was resolute, as if he wouldn't allow them to refuse. Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan could only retreat, but they were already prepared. The moment Ling Han was in danger, they would lend a helping hand, even if they would be reprimanded by Ling Han. Ling Han channeled Lone Wolf's blood, and his power, which was originally equivalent to the 8th layer of Pali, was further increased. However, since he was not injured, the increase in Lone Wolf's blood was not very great, and only allowed him to reach the peak period of the 8th layer of Pali. But with 5 flashes of sword chi, and added with the shocking electricity sword technique, the power was still terrifying. Qing Jiyu, however, was unafraid. With a light humph, he struck out with his palms repeatedly, which turned into several gigantic hands of origin power that slammed towards Ling Han. These gigantic hands of origin power were extremely solid, and easily shattered the sword chi, displaying the full might of an elite of gushing spring tear. "Gagaga, little bastard, you are seeking your own death." Qing Jiyu was overjoyed. He could tell that whether it was Zhu Hexian or Zhang Wei Shan, as well as all the various forces of De Yuan City, they were actually all here because of Ling Han's reputation. Thus, as long as he could capture Ling Han, he would be able to use him as a hostage and escape from the encirclement. Once he was out of danger, he would naturally kill Ling Han with a single slap. That way, he would be able to exact his vengeance, and would never return in this lifetime. "Heng, today is the day of your death." Ling Han gave a long whistle, and waved his sword repeatedly, his sword chi like a rainbow. However, his power was still much weaker than Qing Jiyu's. When he was struck by one of Qing Jiyu's gigantic hands of origin power, his internal organs were shaken, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he had already cultivated the body of dead tree, and also had the indestructible heaven scroll to heal his wounds. Although he appeared to be in a terrible state, in truth, he had completely activated Lone Wolf's blood, and his power continued to increase. However, no matter how much his power increased, he would not be able to break through the barrier of gushing spring tear. Ling Han frowned. The space in his dantian was now extraordinarily large, and his ability to fight a prolonged battle was astonishing. Added with the recovery ability of the indestructible heaven scroll, he was completely capable of exhausting Qing Jiyu to death. But now, he was doing this for the sake of revenge, and had to drag things out for such a long time. He could not wait, and neither could Ling Dongxing. Moreover, he did not want to make Ling Dongxing worry. Then, Ling Han's eyes sharpened, and he did not hesitate to communicate with the Black Tower. He wanted to borrow the power of the Black Tower to strengthen himself and increase his battle prowess by a whole tier. Black Tower, come, give me power. Wang, inside his dantian, the Black Tower trembled lightly and released a mysterious power. Hong, this power surged within Ling Han's body, causing his cultivation level to rise rapidly. 5th layer of Pali, 6th layer, 7th layer. In the time of a single breath, he had broken through to Gushing Spring tier, and continued to rise, only stopping when he reached the 4th layer of Gushing Spring tier. He had completely increased his cultivation level by a whole tier. What? Sensing the explosive increase in Ling Han's aura, Qing Jiyu, Zhu He Xian, and Zhang Wei Shan's eyes all widened in shock. How could this be possible? A martial artist in the 4th layer of Pali had actually instantly increased his power by a whole tier. As expected of a genius in alchemy. Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan were immediately sure that Ling Han had eaten some kind of alchemical pill to obtain such an increase in power, and could not help but feel even more admiration towards Ling Han's skill in alchemy. As for whether there was such an alchemical pill in this world, the two old men did not doubt it at all. They already had blind faith in Ling Han's ability in alchemy. Damn it! Qing Jiyu roared, and clapped his hands repeatedly. One after another, large hands of origin power appeared, slapping towards Ling Han. Ling Han humphed, clenched his left hand into a fist, and punched out. He had only increased his power to the level of Gushing Spring tier, and was unable to release his origin power outwards. But that did not matter. The power of the 4th layer of Gushing Spring tier completely suppressed the power of the 1st layer, and with a single punch, the green-colored large hands of origin power immediately shattered. Ling Han had already arrived. With a wave of his sword, 5 flashes of sword chi shot out. Pooh! 5 sword wounds instantly appeared on Qing Jiyu's chest, causing his flesh to become a bloody mess. Even his bones and internal organs could be vaguely seen. Old dog, hand over your life. Ling Han said darkly. Little bastard, you've only forcibly increased your power to Gushing Spring tier. How much power can you unleash? I'll definitely be able to kill you. Qing Jiyu released a furious roar of indignation. His hands moved, and he used the secret technique of the Qing family, full arm fist. Unfortunately, though he had broken through to Gushing Spring tier and could cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques, the problem was, the Qing family did not even have a yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique, so where would they get a black-grade martial arts technique? This full-arm fist was only a yellow-grade middle-level martial arts technique, so its power was limited. It was completely insufficient to make up for the gap between the 1st layer of Gushing Spring tier and the 4th layer of Gushing Spring tier. Ling Han smirked coldly. If a normal martial artist forcibly increased the power of a whole tier, it would indeed be impossible for them to control such a shocking power, because the increase in power was really too great. But he was different. He had been in Heaven tier in his last life, so what could the 4th layer of Gushing Spring tier do? Ling Han brandished his sword in a powerful attack. His sword chi was like a rainbow, completely suppressing Qing Jiyu. 4th layer of Gushing Spring tier against 1st layer was already an absolute suppression. Peng, Ling Han's foot flew up and landed a kick on Qing Jiyu's chest. Ka, 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 the sound of bones breaking was heard. At least 4 of Qing Jiyu's ribs were broken, and his dantian was directly shattered from the kick. He slid down to the ground in front of Ling Dongxing. Kneel. Ling Han said coldly. Bullshit. Qing Jiyu shouted angrily. Even if he died, he would never lower his head. It's not up to you to decide. Ling Han brandished his sword. Pu, Piu, 2 spurts of blood sprayed out. The tendons in Qing Jiyu's legs had been severed, and he had no choice but to kneel down in front of Ling Dongxing. Little beast, even if I become a ghost, I will not forgive you. Qing Jiyu spat out blood. He knew that he would not be able to escape death today, so he did not even have the thought of begging for mercy. His eyes were like knives, wanting nothing more than to stab Ling Han to death. "Father, I'll leave this person to you." Ling Han calmed down. He knew that Ling Dongxing wanted to kill this enemy with his own hands even more. "All right." Ling Dongxing's face was filled with killing intent. He thought of the clansmen who had been killed right in front of him, like livestock, their blood staining the entire Ling family's manor red, and corpses everywhere. His eyes immediately turned red, and he took the sword that Ling Han handed over and stabbed. Pooh! The sharp sword pierced into his chest, and Cheng Ji-yu glared at Ling Dongxing in indignation. His mouth opened and closed, as if he wanted to say something, but only blood gurgled out of his mouth. His head tilted to the side, and he died just like that. Ling Dongxing kicked Cheng Ji-yu's corpse into the air, and let out a furious roar towards the skies. From now on, there would no longer be a Cheng family in Grey Cloud Town. Chapter 87. There were a few female members of the discipline committee, and before they left, they all gazed at Ling Han with tenderness in their eyes. To them, this was definitely a wealthy son-in-law. Even the third imperial prince was able to order him around, and there were only a few like him in the whole of Rain Country. If they could get their hands on such a Prince Charming, then their life would be worth it. "Brother Ling, I really did not think that you would actually have such achievements in alchemy. Even Grandmaster Fu is filled with admiration for you," the third imperial prince said to Ling Han with a smile after everyone had left. He had caught up to Ling Han yesterday, and had even given him a keepsake. That was because he thought that Fu Yuanxing valued Ling Han very much, but in truth, he knew absolutely nothing about Ling Han. But after that, he had gone to visit Fu Yuanxing, and asked about Ling Han in a roundabout way. Though Fu Yuanxing did not explain in detail, just a few words were enough to make the third imperial prince's heart tremble. Thus, after a mere night, he immediately came to visit Ling Han. For someone like him who had aspired to become an emperor, Ling Han was really too valuable a resource. In truth, he still did not know that Wu Songlin had actually also been won over by Ling Han. Otherwise, he would definitely be even more shocked, and would value Ling Han even more. Ling Han only smiled faintly. He was only a prince of a small country, so he was naturally not worthy of his attention. However, since his present abilities were still not very strong, there was no harm in borrowing the power of this prince. At most, he would help him ascend to the throne in future, and return this favor. A person like the third imperial prince was naturally eloquent. He adjusted the atmosphere, and kept the conversation between the two of them in a relaxed and pleasant atmosphere. At the end, he bid farewell and left. This friendship naturally could not be forged in a single day. At noon, Wu Songlin came running over, and handed over 10 silver notes with a denomination of 1,000,000 silver coins. "Many thanks, young Master Han." Wu Songlin's face was filled with gratitude. If those who did not know better had heard this, they would definitely be completely confused, wondering if Wu Songlin's brain had gone haywire. What kind of person would give money and still say thanks? But to Wu Songlin, the value of that major origin spirit replenishing technique could not be measured with money. Even if the price was 100 million, or 1 billion, he would still think of a way to gather the money. Ling Han unceremoniously put away the silver notes. He was indeed in need of money at present, and this major origin spirit replenishing technique was indeed worth this price. Moreover, money could only be used at a lower cultivation level. When one reached the flower blossom tier, who would still use worldly objects like gold and silver? However, money was still quite useful at present, so Ling Han smiled in satisfaction. Seeing this, Wu Songlin naturally took the opportunity to ask Ling Han for guidance. Ling Han casually gave him a few pointers. Being able to become a black-grade high-level alchemist, Wu Songlin's aptitude was not bad. There were many principles and crucial points that he could understand with just a few pointers. Otherwise, Ling Han really would not have the patience to teach him. Wu Songlin had just left when Lu Yutong arrived with Ling Zixian in tow. Ling Han did not bother to run out to eat, so he used the ingredients in the house to prepare lunch. Because there was a super glutton with them, the amount of food they cooked was also extremely shocking. Those who did not know would think that it was a happy occasion. "I'm sorry," Lu Yutong suddenly said. "Why do you suddenly say that?" Ling Han did not take it to heart, and asked casually. "That Qin Yunxiang has some background, so I was not able to take him down." "Who?" Ling Han turned his head and asked. Lu Yutong could not help but slap her forehead with her hand, and said, "You are really a little forgetful. Could it be that you have forgotten that there was an old guy who wanted to snatch Xian and Hu Niu 2 days ago?" Oh. Ling Han remembered. He had not taken this kind of minor character to heart at all. At that time, since Lu Yutong had said that he would leave it to her to deal with, he had naturally forgotten about this old lecher. He had never thought that even with the power of the Lu clan, they would not be able to deal with him. "Xiang has a daughter who is Sun Ziyan's concubine," Lu Yutong explained. Sun Ziyan. Ling Han could not help but laugh. How could there be someone who would give himself such a name? Was he not afraid that others would call him grandson? The Sun clan is one of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, and Sun Ziyan is one of the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the Sun clan. He should be 25 years old this year, and has just broken through to gushing spring tier. He is very valued by the Sun clan, Lu Yutong said. Thus, the Lu clan does not want to become enemies with the Sun clan, and did not pursue the matter any further, Ling Han continued. Lu Yutong sighed, and said, "That is indeed the case. Sun Ziyan dotes on Xiang's daughter very much, and the clan had just made a move against the Qin clan when Qin Yunxiang went to look for the Sun clan. With Sun Ziyan personally appearing, Qin Yunxiang was saved." Ling Han gave an "oh." No wonder Qin Yunxiang dared to collude with the Earth and Water faction to kidnap someone. As it turned out, not only was he extremely daring in lust, he also had the support of the Sun clan behind him. Even if something happened, there would be someone to cover for him. "Since the Lu clan cannot touch him, then let me do it myself," Ling Han said. In any case, in his eyes, Qin Yunxiang was no different from a flea, and he could be killed with a casual stomp. Lu Yutong looked very ashamed. She had obviously taken charge of this matter, but in the end, she had not managed to accomplish it. "Ha ha ha, don't be so dejected. You're obviously a great beauty, so give me a smile," Ling Han said with a laugh. Hee, Lu Yutong did not laugh, but Hu Niu did. Her mouth was currently stuffed full of meat, so when she laughed, she would not even be able to see her teeth. With a pu-chi sound, seeing her like this, both Lu Yutong and Ling Zixian began to laugh loudly. You two are currently eating?" A pleasant and gentle voice rang out, and an incredibly beautiful figure walked in. With every step she took, lotuses bloomed in her wake, and her beauty was astonishing. "Li Si-chan." Lu Yutong was very surprised. She had never thought that she would meet her here. Lu Yutong. Li Si-chan was also a little surprised. The noble daughter of the Lu clan was actually sitting and eating together with Ling Han. If word of this spread out, no one would believe it. Who did not know that Lu Yutong was usually an icy beauty? It was really unimaginable that she would be so intimate with a man. "Oh, so you two know each other. That's good, that saves me the trouble of introducing you," Ling Han said with a smile. Lu Yutong looked at Li Si-chan, and Li Si-chan also looked at Lu Yutong. In the eyes of these two exquisite beauties, there was a faint flame of battle flickering. Although they were called the twin pearls of exquisite beauty, in truth, they did not have much of a friendship. It was only because they were both too beautiful, and added with the fact that one had outstanding talent in martial arts, while the other had a shocking performance in alchemy, that they were called the same by others. They were both intelligent people. Being able to sense each other's presence in Ling Han's residence. What did this mean? For some reason, they both felt a little sour in their hearts. "Have you eaten?" Ling Han asked Li Si-chan. "No. Li Si-chan had obviously already eaten, but when the words were on the tip of her tongue, they immediately changed. Then let's eat together, Ling Han said with a smile. Li Si-chan did not hesitate to sit down, took a pair of chopsticks and a bowl, and slowly ate. Oh, that's right, did you come looking for me? Ling Han asked. Oh, I specifically came to inform you. A few days ago, there was a small earthquake, and an underground river appeared. There was actually an ancient spirit tool that floated out along the river. Li Si-chan told him a big piece of news. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 88. This young man was in gushing spring tear. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. This man was only 23 or 24 years old, yet he had already broken through to gushing spring tear, and had even reached the peak of the first layer. In Rain Country, he could definitely be called a genius. Could it be Feng Yan? In the vicinity of De Yuan City, if he had any enemies, then it could only be Feng Luo. He had suffered at his hands twice. Could it be that this guy had managed to invite his elder brother back? No, Feng Yan was said to be in the third layer of gushing spring tear. However, this man was too domineering. Obviously, he had barged his way in, and when he was stopped, he casually attacked and injured others. Young Master Han, this man said he wanted to see Lady Lu, and barged his way in. A few of our brothers tried to stop him, but were killed by him. One of the followers following behind the young man immediately said to Ling Han, his face filled with grief and indignation. Ling Han could not help but be angered. Barging in was already arrogant enough, and he actually killed others. This guy actually dared to be so lawless just because he was in gushing spring tear. Go, invite Yutong out for me, the young man said to Ling Han, as if ordering a servant. Ling Han looked at him and said darkly, you killed my men. So what? They're just some lowly dogs, so what if 1,000 or 10,000 of them died? The young man said indifferently. Instantly, the others were filled with righteous indignation, wanting to kill this guy 100 times with their gazes. Ling Han humphed, and said, in my eyes, you're worse than a dog. The young man was startled, then laughed loudly, and said, a mere fifth layer poly actually dares to insult me. Ha 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 ha, you probably don't know who Bo, am. I don't care who you are. Ling Han leaped out, and with a ding, his sword was unsheathed. The sword shot out as fast as lightning. How dare you? The young man who called himself Bo instantly looked furious. He opened his right hand, and his origin power formed a golden palm, grabbing towards the sword. Ling Han's right hand shook, and 5 flashes of sword chi shot out. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 6 swords slashed out simultaneously, and the giant origin power hand was instantly sliced into pieces. Ling Han continued forward, his long sword piercing straight towards Bo's throat. 5 flashes of sword chi. Bo couldn't help but let out a startled cry. He sent out another palm strike, and another large hand of origin energy shot out, blocking Ling Han. He couldn't help but sneer and say, I really didn't expect that a tiny gray cloud town would have a genius who formed 5 flashes of sword chi. And you're clearly only at the 5th level of poly, but your strength is comparable to the 9th level. Your combat ability should be 13 stars, right? What combat capability? The people who followed him in were all confused. They had never heard of this term before. But in front of me, no matter how high your combat ability is, it's useless. Bo shook his head. The gap between us is too great. If I go all out, I can kill you in one move. He paused for a moment, then continued, I cherish talent, so I'll give you a chance to live. As long as you become my subordinate, not only will I spare your life, but I'll also bestow upon you a peerless divine technique. If Lu Yutong heard this, she would definitely laugh her head off. Who was Ling Han? He could casually take out a heaven-grade cultivation technique. What kind of cultivation technique would you take out to be worthy of being called a peerless divine technique? Kneel and accept your death, and I can grant you a quick death. Ling Han said tit for tat. Hu Bo was enraged, and said, Brat, being arrogant because of your talent is not a good thing. Since you insist on seeking death, then I'll grant you your wish. He took the initiative to attack. As his hands moved, his attacks were like waves, and his battle prowess had increased greatly compared to before. However, it was still only 1 star. Of course, this 1 star was relative to Gushing Spring Tear. Ling Han was unafraid. His battle prowess indeed couldn't reach the level of 1 star of Gushing Spring Tear, but his defense was awesome. The body of Dead Tree allowed him to withstand powerful attacks without being injured, and the indestructible Heaven Scroll allowed him to instantly heal wounds, which was enough for him to fight. The two of them clashed, and Sword Chi soared into the sky, origin power overflowing. It can't be, young Master Han is actually so powerful that he can fight against an elite of Gushing Spring Tear. That's nothing, didn't young Master Han just kill one a few days ago? But that old guy just broke through, so he definitely isn't as powerful as he is now. Everyone discussed animatedly, all shocked by Ling Han's strength. He was obviously only in the 5th layer of Pali, yet he could fight against an elite of Gushing Spring Tear. It was practically unbelievable. However, Gushing Spring Tear was Gushing Spring Tear after all. After a few exchanges, not only was there blood at the corner of Ling Han's mouth, the skin all over his body was cracked, and blood seeped out. And this was because he had cultivated the body of Dead Tree, or else under such attacks, even his bones would have been shattered. Regarding this, everyone only felt deep admiration and worship. There was a difference of a whole tier between them, and yet Ling Han could still fight to such a state. If the two of them were at the same tier, it was very likely that Ling Han would be able to kill his opponent in a single move. Ling Han's condition was far from as bad as it seemed. With the circulation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, the wounds in his body healed extremely quickly. Not only did his battle prowess not weaken, it instead became even stronger with the help of Lone Wolf's blood. After fighting for so long, he had already seen through most of his opponent's attacks, and there were practically no secrets left. Xiao, he suddenly struck out with his sword, and 5 flashes of sword chi shot out like a stroke of God, heading straight for Hu Bo's chest. Hu Bo was greatly shocked. Although there were flaws in each of his moves, how could a martial artist of Element Gathering Tier be able to break through all of them? Yet this was the truth. Ling Han's sword had pierced right through the flaws in his moves and stabbed towards him. In a moment of desperation, he could only raise his hands to protect his chest. A spurt of blood shot out, and a wound appeared on his right palm, dripping with blood. The two of them had been fighting for so long, and Ling Han had finally managed to win back some ground. While the surrounding people all cried out in surprise, appearing to be extremely excited. Don't say that Hu Bo was only struck once and suffered a small loss, but the crucial thing was that he was in Gushing Spring Tear. A mighty warrior of Gushing Spring Tear was actually wounded by a Pali martial artist. No matter where this was, it could be considered a magnificent feat. Hu Bo, on the other hand, had a sinister expression on his face. The sword that entered his flesh didn't injure him, and he only lost a bit of blood. However, he hated Ling Han to the bone. A trifling commoner from the desolate border actually dared to injure him, the 7th young master of the Hu family, one of the capital's 8 great influential families. If news of this got out, would he still have the face to raise his head in his circle of friends? Moreover, Ling Han's talent was really too terrifying. If he was really allowed to grow into Gushing Spring Tear, just how strong would he be? Must not be left alive. Hu Bo truly wanted to kill. Although he had wanted to kill Ling Han before, it was like a human swatting a mosquito to death. He did not take it to heart at all. But now, he truly wanted to kill Ling Han. He was going to go all out. He slowly drew his sword and said, "You do have some strength, but this is as far as you can go." Because he was in Gushing Spring Tear, he could use black-grade martial arts techniques. Chapter 89. Hu Bo drew his sword. He had a noble status, and was of the highest status below the imperial family of Rain Country, but now he was actually wounded by someone. This was something that his dignity could not accept no matter what, and he wanted to kill this future king. 5 flashes of sword chi could be considered strong even among king tiers. You can't kill me today, and you won't be able to kill me in the future. You will only die by my hands. Ling Han said darkly. From the moment Hu Bo started a massacre in the Ling family, it meant that this person's fate was already decided, and even his father couldn't change it. Because this was the person he wanted to kill. Hu Bo, what are you doing here? Xiao, a figure flashed, and Lu Yutong appeared. She was originally studying the 3rd level of 3E mysterious arts, but when she heard the commotion become louder and louder, she finally realized that something was wrong, and immediately jumped out. Her pretty face was filled with anger, because when she saw that Ling Han was covered in blood, her heart involuntarily tightened, and then a strong killing intent rose up. Anyone who harmed Ling Han was unforgivable. However, this Hu Bo was the 7th young master of the Hu clan, and his status was similar to hers. Moreover, he was stronger than her, so she couldn't be rash, or she might cause Ling Han's death. This was something she was even more unwilling to do. Yutong. Hu Bo immediately retracted his killing intent, smiled, and said, "You left for a few months, and I was very worried about you, so I specially came to take you back. I don't need you to meddle in other people's business." Lu Yutong said coldly, pointed at the door, and said, "You can get lost." Yutong, you can't have fallen for this brat, right? Hu Bo's eyes swept over, and when he looked at Ling Han, his gaze was filled with jealousy. Then this brat is dead for sure. You dare to take a step forward and try. Lu Yutong stood in front of Ling Han, her pretty face icy cold. Don't tell me you've really been smitten by him. Hu Bo was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He and Lu Yutong were both disciples of the 8 great clans of the imperial capital, and in order to not be oppressed by the imperial family, the 8 great clans would often form alliances through marriage. After Lu Yutong displayed her great talent in martial art, the other 7 aristocratic families were very interested in marrying her. Hu Bo was one of the pursuers. He was also very satisfied because Lu Yutong was not only talented in martial art, but she was also one of the twin beauties of the imperial city. Which man did not want to marry her? Never would she have thought that she would be captivated by a wild boy after going out for a spin. A mere country bumpkin, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill this little bastard. He roared, leaping toward Ling Han. Impudence. Lu Yutong moved to meet him. Hung, the aura of gushing spring tear exploded. Hu Bo exclaimed in surprise, a look of surprise on his face. Gushing spring tear. You've broken through to gushing spring tear. He could not help but be surprised. Though everyone knew that Lu Yutong had outstanding talent in martial art, she would only be able to break through to gushing spring tear after she was 20 years old. Moreover, a few months ago, Lu Yutong was only in the 8th layer of Pali. Logically speaking, it would already be very difficult for her to reach the peak of the 9th layer of Pali by now. If she wanted to break through to gushing spring tear, she would need at least 1 or 2 years of accumulation. However, power could be forcibly increased through alchemical pills, but aura could not be faked. This was definitely gushing spring tear, and she had just broken through not too long ago. Genius, truly a genius. Yutong, I've wronged you, he quickly said. Lu Yutong was able to break through to gushing spring tear in such a short time, so how could she have had the time to talk about love? She must have had some fortuitous encounter here, and had been working hard to break through, which was why she had stayed here. Get lost. Lu Yutong ignored him, and raised her palms, launching a terrifying attack. The symbol of gushing spring tear was origin power taking form. She clapped her palms together, forming one large hand after another of origin power that pressed down on Hu Bo. Hu Bo felt that he was in the wrong, so how could he dare to take the attack head-on? he only continued to dodge, begging for mercy. However, he was in the peak of the first layer of gushing spring tier, so his power was much higher than Lu Yutong's. Moreover, Lu Yutong had just broken through, so she could not use her own power skillfully, so he could naturally deal with her with ease. More importantly, gushing spring tier cultivators could cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques, but Lu Yutong had just broken through, so how could she have had the time to cultivate? It was even more impossible for her to pose a threat to Hu Bo. Yutong, calm down. I'll leave, alright? I'll come find you when we return to the Imperial City. Hu Bo retreated, but before he left, he gave Ling Han a cold look, and said, "Brat, don't think that you can get the moon from the pavilion closest to the water. Yutong is not someone you can have delusions about, or else I'll tear you into pieces." Without waiting for Lu Yutong to react, he leaped, and was already far away. Lu Yutong chased after him for a few steps before giving up. Hu Bo's speed was much faster than hers. "I'm sorry," she said apologetically as she walked to Ling Han's side. She allowed him to come to the Ling family and start a massacre, but she had not been able to take him down. "No need to be sorry, that guy is mine." Ling Han humphed coldly. Presently, he indeed did not have the ability to kill Hu Bo, but he would definitely not wait too long. Lu Yutong knew that Ling Han was a man of his word, and hurriedly said, "Hu clan is one of the 8 great clans of the Imperial City. Their power is not inferior to our Lu clan, and they have an elite of spiritual pedestal tier watching over them. You definitely cannot be impulsive." Ling Han had already guessed that Hu Bo's identity was definitely not ordinary, or else he would not have the right to pursue Lu Yutong. He nodded, smiled, and said, "Am I that kind of impulsive person?" Lu Yutong could not help but mourn for the Hu clan. Although Ling Han was currently only in Pali tier, his talent in martial art was 100 times stronger than her own. Added with his achievements in alchemy, the Hu clan had indeed made a great enemy this time. Although the Ling family still had many things to do, Ling Dongxing forcibly chased Ling Han out of the clan and ordered him to immediately report to Huyang University. Ling Han thought for a moment. He indeed could not be of much help, so he set off. He and Lu Yutong brought Ling Zixian and Hu Niu with them. However, Ling Zixian's parents had both been killed by the Qing family in the previous massacre, so when Ling Han arrived at the Imperial City, he still had to ask someone to help take care of the 2 little girls. Now, Hu Niu had gradually gotten used to eating cooked meat, but she was still only interested in meat. She did not touch rice or vegetables. However, she was now especially clingy towards Ling Han. Whenever she had time, she would lean against him like a little kitten, resting her little head on his knee. However, this was not because she had retracted her wild nature, because she was still extremely fierce towards other people. However, because of her relationship with Ling Han, she had become more amiable towards Lu Yutong and Ling Zixian. At least, she no longer tried to bite the 2 of them. And Ling Han discovered to his surprise that this wild little girl seemed to never have enough to eat. No matter how much food he gave her, she would easily finish it off. And after eating some demonic beast meat, her cultivation level actually skyrocketed, and she very quickly broke through to the 4th layer of body refining tier. She obviously had not awakened her spirit base, and had never cultivated any kind of cultivation technique. This caused Ling Han to be extremely shocked. Power could not possibly appear for no reason. For example, the origin power in a martial artist's body was produced by refining the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Hu Niu did not cultivate it, so it was obviously not through this method. Then, it must be because of the food she ate. Could it be that this little girl could directly transform food into origin power? Once this guess came to mind, Ling Han could not help but be shocked. What kind of shocking ability was that? In order to prove this point, Ling Han and Lu Yutong hunted demonic beasts along the way, allowing Hu Niu to eat to her heart's content. As expected, the more she ate, the faster her strength grew. However, there was a limit to this, because her appetite was not a bottomless pit. When the four of them arrived at the imperial city, Hunyo was already shockingly in the 6th layer of body refining tier. This was not as terrifying as Ling Han's cultivation speed, but it was already shocking enough, because she had not awakened her spirit base. Ling Han felt that he had picked up a treasure. Chapter 90. After so many days, Hunyo managed to learn a few words. The words she said the most were, meet, then, kill, and then, Ling Han. These 3 words only added up to 4 words. However, she at least knew that, Hunyo, was her name. When this name was called, she would raise her head. She still did not like to walk on her feet, but Ling Han had a great influence on her, causing her to imitate him unconsciously. When the 4 of them arrived at the imperial city, the wild little girl finally managed to get used to walking on her feet, but when there was no one around, she would still move with all 4 limbs. That was extremely fast, like a ferocious tiger released from its cage. Her bad habit of not wearing clothes had not changed. A new set of clothes would be torn and tattered after a few days, giving Ling Han and Lu Yutong a huge headache. However, Ling Zixian was very envious, because she could always change into new clothes. To enter the city, they actually had to pay a fee of 1 silver coin. 4 people meant 4 silver coins. For Ling Han, this was a small matter, but when he thought about how many people were entering and exiting the city every day, it would add up to an astonishing sum. As expected, it was good to be an emperor. This road was opened by me, so the moment I entered, I had to collect money. After the 4 of them entered the city, it was just noon. They decided to eat first, then go to the academy to register. Meat, meat, meat. Hunyo sat down seriously, and began to drool. Ling Han did not look at the menu, and said to the waiter, just serve whatever tastes good, but there must be plenty of meat. Okay, the waiter replied and left. There were not many customers in the restaurant for now, but as the dishes were served, and it was nearing the time for most people to eat, the number of customers gradually increased, and the restaurant became more and more lively. Hunyo did not use chopsticks, and simply stretched out her small hands to grab an entire chicken or duck, finishing it in 2 or 3 bites. Her appetite was shockingly good. Aren't you afraid of dirtying your hands? Ling Han shook his head. He had taught her who knew how many times, but the wild little girl always found chopsticks troublesome. Hunyo giggled and continued to eat enthusiastically. In comparison, Ling Zixian was much more refined. She took small sips and smiled without showing her teeth. She already had the air of a young lady from a wealthy family. What a beautiful daughter, an old voice rang out, causing Ling Han and Lu Yutong to turn their heads. This was an old man in his 60s. He was dressed in embroidered clothes, and 8 of his 10 fingers had rings on them. He looked extremely wealthy. His eyes were fixated on Hunyo and Ling Zixian, and they were practically shining. Are the 2 of you the little girl's parents? The old man walked over and asked. However, he immediately introduced himself, I'm Qin Yunxiang, the shopkeeper of 4 Seas Enterprise. I have a bit of a reputation. Lu Yutong shook her head. Ling Han said to Qin Yunxiang, we're not their parents. We're just relatives. Ling Zixian very sensibly smiled at the old man, and called him grandpa. Hunyo, on the other hand, only cared about eating. To her, eating meat was the most important thing in this world. Qin Yunxiang seemed to be very fond of these 2 little girls, and kept on talking, causing Ling Zixian to laugh incessantly. Hunyo, however, acted as if she had not heard anything. At first, Ling Han only thought that this old man was especially fond of children, and did not pay much attention to it. However, the old man's gaze became more and more strange, as if he was a wolf that had set its eyes on a lamb cub. His eyes were so green that they were almost about to emit light. He finally realized that he had encountered an old lecher, and one that specifically targeted little girls. Come, Grandpa will give you a palm print. Xiang could not help but reach out to grab Ling Zixian's small hand, revealing the true face of a lecher. Pa! Ling Han reached out and grabbed the old man's wrist. His gaze sharpened, and he said, "Old man, you're already so old, yet you still refuse to behave." Xiang was not a martial artist, and being grabbed by Ling Han like this, he was instantly in so much pain that he cried out for his parents. Only when Ling Han flung him away did he stumble back. He raised his hand, and shockingly, there were now 4-finger marks on his wrist, so green that they were about to turn black. His face was also a bit dark. He was wary of Ling Han, yet he was unwilling to give up on these two pretty little girls. He said, "Anyways, they're not your daughters, so why don't you name a price?" A flash of killing intent flashed across Ling Han's face, and he said, "Old lecher, say one more word and I'll kill you." Xiang still wanted to increase the price to move Ling Han, but when he saw the killing intent on the latter's face, he could not help but shudder. He did not dare to cause any more trouble, and hurriedly turned around and left. However, he would not give up so easily. He thought, since you don't know how to appreciate my kindness, I'll ask the people of Earth and Water faction to help me snatch these two little girls over." The old man stumbled away, and instantly caused the other customers in the restaurant to roar with laughter. "Little brother, that old guy is a famous lecher, and he especially sets his eyes on little girls. If it were not for the fact that he has always only spent money, who knows how many times he would have been beaten to death," a customer who knew that old lecher said, shaking his head at the side. Ling Han did not take it to heart. The old man himself was not a martial artist, so his circle could only be that of mortals, and his power was limited. If Qin Yunxiang still did not know what was good for him just now, he would definitely not show any mercy. Hunyo ate very quickly, as if she was afraid that someone would snatch it from her. And when Ling Han and the others had already filled their stomachs, she was still eating, and her speed did not slow down in the slightest. This caused the customers in the restaurant to click their tongues in wonder. No matter how they thought about it, they could not understand how the little girl's stomach could hold so much food. Only when it was past 2 in the afternoon did the little girl pat her stomach in satisfaction, burrow into Ling Han's arms, and very soon fell asleep. She could eat and sleep. Ling Han stood up to pay the bill. A single meal actually cost over 1,000 silver coins, and at least 90% of it was in Hunyo's stomach, which showed how much of a wastrel the little girl was. Fortunately, Ling Han had killed Hang Zhan, Ma Lang, and the others, so he did not lack money. The 4 of them left the restaurant and continued on their way to Huyang University. After walking for a while, Lu Yutong said to Ling Han, "There are 2 people following us." Ling Han nodded, and said, "I noticed them long ago. I just don't know if they are after our money or our people." If it was a person, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes. Needless to say, it was definitely that old lecher Qin Yunxiang, so don't blame him for being merciless. "They're coming," Lu Yutong said in a low voice. At this moment, the 2 of them were walking into a secluded alley. There was not a single person in the surroundings, so of course this was done on purpose by Ling Han. 2 sturdy men quickly walked up to Ling Han, and when they arrived at his side, one of them moved to hug Ling Zixian, while the other stretched out his hand towards Ling Han, wanting to forcefully snatch Hunyo from his arms. These 2 sturdy men were not martial artists, and were only slightly more sturdy than normal people. After all, out of 10 people, at most one would have a spirit base, so how could there be so many martial artists? Ling Han smiled, and not only did he not resist, he even raised his hand slightly, allowing the sturdy man to easily snatch Hunyo away. The sturdy man could not help but be startled. This kind of reaction was completely out of his expectations. Hunyo, however, was startled awake. She was like a wild beast, extremely vigilant. When she discovered that she was being hugged by an unfamiliar man, a fierce glint immediately appeared in her eyes. Chapter 91. The saber was so heavy, so why was it floating on the surface of the water? This was the wonder of spiritual tools. Some were as heavy as a mountain, while some were as light as a feather. What kind of martial intent had been fused with them? Ling Han did not pay much attention to it, but when his eyes swept over the saber and saw a mark on the hilt, his expression suddenly changed, and his whole body trembled. What's wrong? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan asked at the same time, and when they found that the other had synchronized with them again, the two girls both humphed at each other. They followed Ling Han's gaze, but when they found that the image of a naked girl was actually carved on the hilt of the saber, they both felt embarrassed, and could not help but spit. Men were indeed lustful, and even this young man Ling Han was no exception. Ling Han did not answer, and only stared at the saber as if there were flowers growing on it. In his last life, he had taken in a total of 4 disciples. 2 of them studied alchemy with him, while the other 2 studied martial arts with him. Of the 2 who studied martial arts with him, one was called Chen Rui Jing, and the other was called Jiang Yufeng. Of the 2, Chen Rui Jing was very serious and mature, while Jiang Yufeng was extremely lively, and boasted that he was a playboy. Jiang Yufeng had a strange hobby. He liked to carve the image of a naked girl on his weapons, and what he was most proficient in was saber techniques. This was the spiritual tool that Jiang Yufeng had used before. Although Ling Han had never seen this saber before, there would definitely not be many people in this world who would be able to carve the image of a naked girl on their saber. Moreover, they would have to be at least in the deity transformation tier, which was even rarer. He could almost be sure that it was only that freak of a disciple of his who had done so. Most importantly, Ling Han recognized Jiang Yufeng's drawing style. There was definitely no mistake about it. After 10,000 years, he naturally knew that his 4 disciples must have long since died of old age. Thus, after he had been reborn, he had not thought too much about it. Humans, after all, were born, grow old, get sick, and die. Everyone had their own destiny. But the weapon that his disciple had used had floated out from an underground river, and it was even together with the other spiritual tools. This caused Ling Han to have countless suspicions. Why? Why would Jiang Yufeng's weapon be here? Ling Han focused his gaze. This saber was extremely badly damaged. The blade was completely chipped, and the head of the saber had been snapped in half. However, the material that this saber was made from was indeed of the highest quality. After 10,000 years, it was still as shiny as water, and there was not the slightest hint of rust. Judging from this, Jiang Yufeng should have experienced a terrible battle, and even his spiritual tool had been destroyed in the battle. And for Jiang Yufeng, who loved sabers as much as his own life, even if his saber was damaged, he would still carefully take it back and bury it. But now, it had floated out from the underground river. An ominous premonition suddenly surged up in Ling Han's heart. Could it be that Jiang Yufeng had met with a mishap? But it should be known that in his last life, not only him, even his 4 disciples were all alchemists. They had followed him, the strongest alchemist in history, and kept on taking alchemical pills to advance their cultivation levels. Their power had soared at a very fast pace. At that time, though Jiang Yufeng had not broken through to heaven tier, he had still reached deity transformation tier. Ling Han believed that if he was given another 100 or 200 years' time, breaking through to heaven tier would definitely not be a problem. Moreover, they are 4 fellow disciples. If Jiang Yufeng had met with a mishap of life and death, how could the other 3 just stand by and watch? Could it be that there was still a problem that the 4 of them could not deal with even if they joined forces? What had actually happened? Ling Han suddenly felt a strong urge. He wanted to enter the source of the underground river and see if he could find some clues. It's mine. It's mine. Everyone made their moves. Because this saber was severely damaged, the tool's spirit had probably already been extinguished, and its power was not obvious. It was easily captured by the fishing net, and thus caused everyone to fight over it. This was a spirit tool, so even if it was damaged, it still had a very high research value. If one could study and discover a sliver of martial intent within it, then it would definitely allow one's own power to advance by leaps and bounds. Ling Han's eyes grew cold, and he said, "This saber is mine." Everyone paused slightly, and then laughed loudly. Wasn't that right? A brat in element gathering tier actually dared to fight over the saber with them, elites of gushing spring tier. But laughing was laughing, and they immediately began to fight again. There were no rules here, and whoever managed to get their hands on the saber would get to keep it. Ling Han gave a long shout, and charged into the ring of battle. How dare you! Those elites of gushing spring tier were all furious. A mere martial artist in element gathering tier actually dared to fight over the saber with them? The world of martial arts had a strict hierarchy, just like alchemists. When a yellow-grade low-level alchemist met a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist, he would have to bow respectfully, as a junior should. And in front of gushing spring tier martial artists, even element gathering tier martial artists would have to act like obedient grandsons. They did not even have the right to stand together, what more to fight over the saber together. Get lost. One of them struck out with a palm, pushing towards Ling Han. Gushing spring tier martial artists were able to release their origin power, and their destructive power would increase explosively by an uncountable number of times. Thus, even if he had not used his full power, this attack was still extremely terrifying to Ling Han. Ling Han! Lu Yutong cried out in shock, and hurriedly leapt out, wanting to save Ling Han. But she had just moved when Lu Bucheng cut over and pressed down on her shoulder, forcefully restraining her. The 9th layer of gushing spring tier against the 1st layer of gushing spring tier, this was a completely one-sided battle. Yet Ling Han only stared at the saber, and circulated the indestructible heaven scroll with all his might. He used the exiting cloud steps, and was as fast as lightning. Who? The gushing spring tier elite who had attacked had not thought that Ling Han would have such a terrifying explosive speed, and in his carelessness, he had not used his full power, so Ling Han instantly managed to escape. The others were restraining each other, and similarly did not take a junior in element gathering tier seriously. Instead, it allowed Ling Han to take advantage of this gap and get closer and closer to the saber. How dare you! After a moment of shock, these people were all enraged, and they all struck out at Ling Han. They were all in high-level gushing spring tier, and the weakest among them had reached the 7th layer. Now that they all attacked Ling Han at the same time, the impact was like a landslide or a tsunami, extremely terrifying. Peng, Ling Han was unsurprisingly sent flying. But what made everyone speechless was that this guy actually took the opportunity to grab the saber and hold it close to his chest. No matter, he's just a junior. Let's first determine the victor, and then decide who this saber belongs to, an elite of gushing spring tier said. Bullshit, competing in strength? Is that fair? Then I'll invite my clan's ancestor to compete in strength with you. How about first come, first served? Whoever manages to get the saber will get to keep it. This is something that everyone has agreed on. Why has it become a competition of strength to snatch it? We're only in gushing spring tier, and if it's a competition of strength, it's not us. Why don't we do it this way? We'll draw lots, and it'll belong to whoever draws it. Everyone was making a ruckus, but they did not notice that Ling Han's body shook, and he had already slowly sat up. Everyone here had a powerful background, so in the midst of the battle, no one dared to make a killing move. And it was precisely because of this that Ling Han had the opportunity to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. But even so, under the simultaneous attacks of so many elites, he had still broken quite a few bones, and his internal organs had been damaged. His injuries were extremely severe. Normally speaking, he could only be carried away to recuperate from his injuries, and would not be able to walk for at least a dozen days. But there was still a drop of indestructible true fluid in his body. After cultivating the body of dead tree, one would be able to condense a drop of indestructible true fluid, and the use of indestructible true fluid was to heal injuries. No matter how severe the injuries were, as long as they still had a breath left in them, they would be able to recover instantly. This was the terrifying aspect of the indestructible heaven scroll. Chapter 92. Lu Yutong was a true disciple. But she wasn't as strong as Qi Yongyi. Why? Because she was a noble daughter of the Lu family. Firstly, the academy had to give her some face, and secondly, during the tournament at the end of the year, she could obtain a treasure from the family to temporarily increase her battle prowess. Thus, she easily maintained her status as a true disciple. Of course, this kind of backdoor could only be opened once by every noble clan. The other clansmen had to rely on their own strength to fight. Above the true disciples, there were 3 core disciples. Core disciples were fostered by the academy as they were the strongest of the younger generation of Rain Country, representing the future level of martial art in Rain Country and the face of the country. To become a core disciple, Gushing Spring Tier was a must. A few hundred years ago, the strongest core disciple even reached Spiritual Ocean Tier. However, everyone had to leave the academy when they reached 30 years old, because after 30 years old, they were considered to be in their prime. The current 3 core disciples were Qi Fengyun, the 3rd prince of Rain Country. Not only was he extremely talented, he also received the Rain Country royalty and Huyang University's focus on cultivation, so he was naturally very strong. He was 27 years old, but had already reached the 7th layer of Gushing Spring Tier. He was the strongest disciple of Huyang University, and was also known as the strongest prodigy of Rain Country. The second was Zhao Huan, a member of the Zhao clan of the 8 great clans. According to legend, there was a strange phenomenon where a golden light illuminated half of the imperial city. He was almost killed by the secret forces of the imperial family, who thought it could threaten the throne of the Qi clan. Thankfully, the current emperor was wise, and not only did he not harm Zhao Huan, he even conferred him the title of Golden Sky Lord. He was a marquis at birth, a first in Rain Country. After Zhao Huan awakened his spirit base, he also displayed terrifying talent in martial art. He was 23 years old, at the 5th layer of Gushing Spring Tier, not inferior to Qi Fengyun. The third was Qin Yi, no surname. It was said that he was an orphan, found on the streets by the dean of Huyang University, and lost his right arm when he was young. On the path of martial arts, losing a right arm was practically a death sentence, and it was impossible for one to have any future prospects. However, Qin Yi still became a true disciple. His talent was truly terrifying. Qin Yi, 22 years old, in the 3rd layer of the Gushing Spring Tier, but it was rumored that his battle prowess soared to 7 battle stars, and even Zhao Huan had to be wary of him. Interesting. Ling Han thought inwardly as he waited for the recruitment teacher. He did not take Qi Fengyun and Zhao Huan to heart, but this Qin Yi did pique his interest. Could it be that he was also a genius with a god-level spiritual root? Otherwise, how could he advance so quickly and have such high battle prowess? Yes, are you a new student? The teacher finally walked out and looked at Ling Han with a strange gaze. He had never seen anyone sign up with a little girl in their arms. Yes. Ling Han drew out the certificate issued by the royal house of the De Yuan king, and handed it over to the teacher in charge of enrollment. The teacher was an elite martial artist in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring Tier, and was not to be underestimated. The teacher in charge of student recruitment took it and couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. He blurted out, "You are Ling Han." Ling Han scratched his head, and said, "Am I very famous?" "Ha ha ha ha, with the prowess of the 4th layer of Pali, you defeated the 9th layer of Pali, and Qi Yongyi, whose battle prowess was not weak at all. Talent, TSK, even the dean said that if you came to register, I should immediately take you to see him," the teacher in charge of enrollment said. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he cried out in surprise, You broke through to the 5th layer of Pali." At first, he was shocked, but then he remembered that Ling Han must have long since reached the peak of the 4th layer of Pali, and thus, after so many days, this guy managed to rush up to the 5th layer of Pali. With that thought, his shock lessened greatly. If he knew that a few months ago, Ling Han was only in the 2nd layer of body refining tier, he would probably be so shocked that his jaw would drop. However, when he called out to her, Hun Yo instantly woke up. She was very displeased, and bared her teeth at the teacher in charge of enrollment, showing her ferocious side. "Come, I'll take you to see the dean." The teacher in charge of enrollment waved at Ling Han. Although he was still very weak now, in time, he might become the strongest core disciple and bring glory to Rain Country. Ling Han nodded, and followed the teacher in charge of enrollment out, walking on the path of the academy. They soon arrived in front of a group of buildings. The people who lived here were all the higher-ups of the academy. However, the dean was not in his own courtyard, so the teacher in charge of enrollment told him to wait for a while he went to look for the dean who had disappeared to who knew where. Ling Han waited for a while, and then felt bored, so he began to walk around the area. He suddenly smelled a familiar scent, and his feet involuntarily moved, following the trail. This was a quiet and elegant courtyard. The door was ajar, and was not closed. Ling Han pushed open the door and entered. Very quickly, he saw a girl sitting cross-legged in the courtyard. In her hand was a small alchemy furnace, and her entire right hand was spitting out flames. She was concocting the storm pill. The storm pill could increase a martial artist's speed in a short period of time, like a gust of wind blowing past. It was a very practical alchemical pill. However, this scent did not seem right. Ling Han wrinkled his nose and sniffed. Immediately, realization dawned on him. One of the supplementary ingredients was wrong. Although he could still successfully concoct the storm pill, it would affect the effect of the pill, and increase the chance of the furnace exploding. He opened his mouth and said, "I advise you to stop immediately. Otherwise, in less than 3 breaths, the furnace will definitely explode." The girl did not pay any attention to him. This was the crucial time to concoct the storm pill, so how could she be distracted? In the second breath, the furnace lid was suddenly sent flying, and a bunch of fine debris sprayed out from inside. Although she managed to avoid most of it, her face was still smeared with some. The furnace had exploded. The girl finally raised her head and walked towards Ling Han, a hint of surprise in her eyes. How did this guy know that the furnace was about to explode? With her control, she would not be affected by external factors at all. Vermilion wolf bone is one of the ingredients that is most likely to cause a furnace to explode. Furthermore, if it's placed in the storm pill, it will also affect the quality of the finished pill. I don't know which idiot came up with this idea. Ling Han shook his head. "How dare you insult my master?" The girl flew into a rage, and her figure flashed as she leapt towards Ling Han. Her right hand struck out with a palm, and a flame appeared on it, causing the air around it to ripple. Poly 7th layer. Ling Han immediately saw through his opponent's cultivation base, and from the power of her palm, he could tell that her battle prowess had not even reached 7 stars. In truth, this was normal. Alchemists spent all their energy on alchemy, so where would they find the time to study martial techniques? This girl's cultivation base at the 7th layer of poly had most likely been raised by alchemical pills, so it was understandable that her battle prowess was low. When she stood up, Ling Han discovered to his surprise that this girl's figure was really slender. She was about as tall as he was, and she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was actually ridiculously beautiful, and was not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yutong. "Hee, did I say something wrong?" Ling Han said as he dodged. Meanwhile, Hunyo was squatting on one side, her face filled with excitement. She wanted nothing more than to pounce on him and take a few bites. Chapter 93. The woman snorted. As she continued to attack, she said, "This storm pill's recipe is incomplete. My master spent several years to complete it. That's a huge contribution to the alchemy world. You dare insult my master? Don't tell me you don't deserve a beating." The storm pill is also lost. Ling Han couldn't help but frown. What was going on? Why were there so many pill recipes from his era that had been lost? The reversal pill, the storm pill, and the dark moon grass were actually used to refine the purple yuan pill, wasting them to such an extent? Logically speaking, even if the alchemy world hadn't made much progress in the past 10,000 years, it shouldn't have regressed to such an extent, right? He fiercely waved his palm and forced the other party back. He smiled and said, "Based on what you've said, your master does indeed have some skill. However, if I can refine an even better storm pill, then what?" "Impossible. How could you possibly surpass my master?" The woman didn't believe him at all. "Let me try. At worst, we can fight again later," Ling Han said. "All right," the woman agreed. Ling Han picked up the pill furnace that had fallen to the ground and said, "Prepare the medicinal ingredients for me." In one breath, he listed out over 20 medicinal ingredients. If it had been an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't have been able to remember it. However, since this woman was an alchemist, she definitely had a powerful memory in this area. Very quickly, she retrieved the ingredients that Ling Han needed from the house. Ling Han sat down on the ground, his right hand holding the alchemy furnace. Hong, a ball of flame suddenly soared from his hand. A look of displeasure appeared on the woman's pretty face, because when alchemists concocted pills, their expressions were solemn, and they used the posture of sitting cross-legged. This was a kind of ceremony, but Ling Han was sitting on the ground, which was simply outrageous. However, when she saw that Ling Han had already started concocting the pill, she could only forcefully swallow the reprimand that was on the tip of her tongue. Disturbing someone else's pill concoction was a great taboo for alchemists, so she naturally would not knowingly violate it. She was very disdainful. It should be known that although her master did not belong to Tianyiji, his skill in alchemy was very high. He was a black-grade high-level alchemist, the same level as the highest person in charge of Tianyiji in Rain Country. Currently, he was the headmaster of the alchemy department of Huyang University. When Wu Songlin's name was mentioned, who wouldn't respectfully address him as Grandmaster? Even the Emperor of Rain Country had to be polite to him. This brat actually dared to call her master an idiot. If this were to spread out, he would definitely be beaten to death within 3 steps. Once Ling Han started concocting, his expression immediately changed, and the aura of a great grandmaster circulated around him. His left hand flew, throwing one medicinal ingredient after another into the pill furnace, while his right hand continued to spin the pill furnace. The flames were sometimes red, sometimes green, and sometimes white. The changes were extremely fast, causing people to be dazzled. The woman's disdainful expression quickly receded and was replaced by a look of shock. Her name was Li Si-chan, and she herself was a genius in alchemy, which was why she had been accepted as a disciple by Wu Songlin. She was very conceited, but when compared to Ling Han, she had to admit that his skills were far more experienced and skilled than hers. That kind of natural ease was as if he had immersed himself in alchemy for a few hundred years, and had already reached a level where he could control the pill furnace even with his eyes closed. This kind of achievement, not to mention her, even her master would be left in the dust. How was this possible? How was this possible? Wasn't he supposed to be a profligate young master? How could he have such shocking ability in alchemy? In just a short while, the medicinal ingredients in front of Ling Han had all disappeared, and there was a slight bead of sweat on his forehead. After all, the storm pill was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemical pill, and it was one of the more difficult ones to concoct. He could concoct it now, but because his cultivation level was a bit low, it was a bit difficult for him. Good disciple, you've finally concocted the storm pill. It was at this moment that a pleasantly surprised voice was heard from the door. A short old man walked in, his face full of smiles, and in his hand was a food container. There was another old man behind him, and the two of them were standing side by side. If one looked closely, they would be able to see that both of them were wearing 3 silver badges on their chests. Black-grade high-level alchemist. In the whole of Rain Country, there were only 2 black-grade high-level alchemists. One was the Pavilion Lord of Tianyiji, Fu Yuansheng, and the other was the headmaster of the Alchemy Department of Huyang University, Wu Songlin. It was these two. When Wusong Lin saw that the woman was standing, his old face was instantly filled with shock. He had never imagined that the person concocting the pill was not his own disciple. Fu Yuansheng also looked surprised. He knew that Wusong Lin had taken in a good disciple. He was only 18 years old, but had already become a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist. The storm pill was one of the most difficult pills to concoct among yellow-grade middle-level alchemical pills, and now it was actually another young man who was concocting it. This naturally caused him to be shocked. This old man Wu couldn't have taken in another genius alchemist disciple, right? Damn it, why was it that all the geniuses were snatched away by him? Hunyo had originally been extremely bored, and was lying on the ground sleeping. But when Wusong Lin entered, she immediately wrinkled her nose and squatted down. Her eyes were fixed on the food container in his hands, and with a sudden roar, she leapt out and pounced onto the food container. Ling Han's right hand moved continuously, and 3 different flames, red, green, and white, shot out from his 5 fingers at the same time, which were then suddenly extinguished. 3 Fire Guide. This was a creative invention of his last life, and had revolutionized the world of alchemy. Not only could it increase the quality of alchemical pills, it could even save dead pills that would have exploded. Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng were both stunned, their eyes bulging out of their sockets and their mouths agape, looking as if they were about to explode from shock. Hunyo took the opportunity to snatch away Wusong Lin's food container, immediately opened it, and began to enjoy it happily. Could this be the legendary 3 Fire Guide that has long been lost in history? To be able to explode 3 balls of flames of different temperatures at the same time, greatly increasing the effect of the completed pill, and even saving dead pills, this is a legend among legends, and I have always thought it to be a myth. It shouldn't be real, right? It's just an imitation. The 2 old men said one after another, their expressions filled with shock. Who? Ling Han exhaled, through the alchemy furnace at Li Si-chan, and said, "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. Have a look." Shua, the 2 old men rushed out at the same time, and began to fight over the furnace like 2 little children. They were both powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier, and their attacks were as fast as lightning, dazzling the onlookers' eyes. Li Si-chan was dumbfounded. These were the 2 most respected alchemists of Rain Country, and now they actually acted like little children. How could she believe her own eyes? Finally, the 2 old men stopped. One held the alchemy furnace, while the other opened the lid of the furnace, and carefully took out a vermilion-colored alchemical pill. This color, this smell. That's right, this is the real storm pill. Wusong Lin dug out a piece, put it into his mouth, and tasted it. He could not help but look even more shocked, and said, "This is definitely the real storm pill, and its effect has reached 12 stars, no, 13 stars. What?" Fu Yuansheng instantly jumped up. Chapter 94. In the world of alchemy, if the quality of a completed pill reached the standard, then it would be rated as 10 stars. If the effect exceeded the standard, then it would be rated as 11 stars, 12 stars, and normally, it would not exceed 20 stars. If the quality did not reach the standard, then it would be rated as 1 to 9 stars, and any pill below 1 star would be considered a useless pill, completely useless. Hiss, even if I concoct low-level alchemical pills, I can at most reach 12 stars. Fu Yuansheng exclaimed in shock. Li Si-chan's face was filled with disbelief. She could also be considered a genius in alchemy, or else she would not have been taken in as Wusong Lin's personal disciple. However, the majority of the completed pills she concocted were only 10 stars, barely passing. A small number were 9 stars, and a small number were 11 stars. And the storm pill was considered extremely difficult to concoct among yellow-grade middle-level alchemical pills. For example, she had already concocted it for a month, but every time she concocted it, the furnace would explode. It was clear how difficult it was. For this kind of alchemical pill, as long as it could be concocted, it would be considered a success. Even if it was 3 or 4 stars, there would be a huge market for it. 13 stars would be fought over. This guy really did not boast. He really concocted the storm pill, and the quality of the completed pill was even higher than Wusong Lin's. The storm pill that Wusong Lin concocted was only 8 stars, at most 9 stars. Could it be that master was really wrong? Young man, young man. Wusong Lin's eyes shone with a golden light. His expression was completely on par with Hun You's. In an instant, he dashed in front of Ling Han, grabbed his hand, and said, "You used the 3-fire guide just now?" N. Ling Han nodded. Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng both inhaled sharply. This was something that only existed in legends. What did a young man who knew how to use the 3-fire guide mean? "Young man, take me as your master, and I guarantee that you will at least become an earth-grade alchemist," Wusong Lin immediately said. Hearing his words, Fu Yuansheng naturally understood that Ling Han had nothing to do with Wusong Lin at all. He hurriedly squeezed his way forward, and said, "No, no, no, take me as your master. I am the pavilion master of Tianyiji in Rain Country, and have countless resources in my hands. You can concoct whatever pill you want." "Bullshit. Old man Fu, you have to know that this is my Huyang University's territory. You're trying to steal from me." Wusong Lin was instantly enraged. This youth was obviously a rare genius in the Tao of alchemy. Just by looking at the storm pill, he could tell that it was a 13-star alchemy pill. "What do you mean by, dig into your head? You don't even know what this young man's name is, and you still say he's your man?" Fu Yuanxing snorted. Turning around, his face was full of smiles. "Young man, what's your name?" Li Si-chan was completely stupefied. These two were the strongest alchemists in Rain Country. No matter which of them announced that they wanted to take in a disciple, it was guaranteed that there would be a line of people lining up from the east gate to the west gate of the imperial city. But now, the two of them were actually fighting over who wanted to take in Ling Han as their disciple, and had even almost gotten into a fight. How could she not be shocked? Moreover, she was even feeling a little jealous. "I am Ling Han said. "I'm a new student who has joined Huyang University this year. Did you hear that? This is a disciple of my academy." Wusong Lin was very proud of himself, and waved his hand at Fu Yuansheng. "I'm not going to drink with you today. You'd better hurry back to your Tianyiji." "So what if he's a student of your Huyang University? There's no conflict with him taking me as his master." Fu Yuansheng did not mind at all, and continued to speak to Ling Han. "Young man, what do you say? This is my disciple. Old man Fu, do you want to fight with me?" Wusong Lin was seething with anger. "This disciple, I'm definitely going to fight for him." Fu Yuansheng was not to be outdone. "Are you going to ignore our friendship of more than 10 years? Hey, you're the one who insists on fighting with me." The two old men's necks were thick, and it looked like they were about to get into a fight. Master, you two can take him as your disciple together," Li Si-chan interrupted. "That's right." The two old men were startled at the same time. Why hadn't they thought of such a simple solution? They both walked towards Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I think, the two of you are still unable to teach me." This, what a bold claim. Li Si-chan was so shocked that her small mouth gaped open. Who were Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng? The two strongest alchemists of Rain Country were still unable to teach him. Although he had concocted a 13-star storm pill, the storm pill was only a yellow-grade mid-level pill after all. Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng also looked displeased. Although this young man was a genius, he was really too proud. This kind of person might shine for a while, but he would definitely not achieve too much. Ling Han smiled and said, "The two of you, we can discuss and compare notes with each other." These words of his were actually spoken very modestly. As the former alchemy emperor, not to mention that these two were only black-grade high-level alchemists. Even earth-grade high-level alchemists would only be able to stand respectfully in front of him and listen to him respectfully. But Wu Songlin and Fu Yuanxing did not know this, and the displeasure on their faces became even stronger. Ling Han acted as if he did not see them, and began to speak casually, all of which were some general knowledge of alchemy. However, his current cultivation level had indeed dropped, and it was impossible for him to concoct high-level alchemical pills, but in terms of theoretical knowledge, who could compare with him? The two alchemists had been indifferent in the beginning, but they gradually became more cautious. Occasionally, they would also speak up to discuss, but as they spoke, they became the one asking for advice, and continuously asked Ling Han some difficult questions about alchemy. Li Si-chan watched from the side, her face already numb from shock. This young man was obviously even younger than her, so how could he have such shocking understanding of alchemy? If one did not know him, and did not hear his voice, anyone would think that he was an old alchemist. She also had shocking talent in alchemy, which was why Wu Songlin had taken her as a disciple. Moreover, she was extremely beautiful, and together with Lu Yutong, they were known as the twin beauties of the imperial capital. The number of people who pursued her could line up several times around the imperial capital. But compared to the two of them, she was practically like an alchemy apprentice who had not even started. As she listened from the side, her admiration for Ling Han grew stronger and stronger, and she could not help but sigh. There were indeed geniuses in this world. If not for that, how could he possibly surpass her master in alchemy at such a young age? As expected, there is no such thing as advice from one's elders, and those who are capable are the teachers. Fu Yuansheng was the first to sigh. At first, I had thought that young friend was arrogant and conceited, but I never thought that the arrogant and conceited one would be me. Young friend's understanding of alchemy has already far surpassed mine, and in future, you will definitely become an earth-grade alchemist, or even a heaven-grade alchemist. After hearing young friend's words, I feel that the door to becoming an earth-grade alchemist is already wide open. If you completely understand young friend's understanding just now, you will definitely be able to step into the next level. Wu Songlin also sighed. He stood up, bowed deeply towards Ling Han, and said, "Many thanks, young friend." "Many thanks, young friend." Fu Yuansheng also stood up, and bowed towards Ling Han. Li Si-chan was completely numb. Because of the special nature of alchemists, these two could be said to be the most important people in Rain Country, second only to the Rain Emperor. But now, they were actually bowing together towards a young man. This was a treatment that even the Rain Emperor had not enjoyed before. If word of this spread out, probably no one would believe it. Chapter 95. In these few days, Ling Han and the other two had all broken through. Lu Yutong had accumulated a lot of experience. She had 3 absolute meridians in the first place, and coupled with 3 mysterious art, the speed of her cultivation was naturally ridiculously fast. Now that she had obtained the 4 transformations pill, she naturally advanced even faster. Most importantly, the 4 transformations pill could help her break through to the second layer of the gushing spring tier. For the majority of people, the barrier between tiers was the most difficult, because as long as one was willing to put in the effort and cultivate diligently, or had enough alchemical pills, one could advance very smoothly from the early stage of any tier to the peak stage. But completing the breakthrough was a problem. Even if it was from the first layer of the gushing spring tier to the second layer of the gushing spring tier, this step was very difficult. Why were there so few powerful warriors of the spiritual pedestal tier in Rain Country? It was because they did not have enough comprehension of their tier, so they were all stuck in the spiritual ocean tier. And below the spiritual ocean tier, there was still a large number of people stuck in the gushing spring tier and element gathering tier. The 4 transformations pill could help martial artists gain comprehension of their tier. If this was known to others, it would be so shocking that their scalps would go numb. Lu Yutong was a smart person in the first place, and with the help of the 4 transformations pill, she herself was almost at the peak stage of the first layer of the gushing spring tier. After a few days of trying to break through, the conditions were naturally ripe, and she advanced a step further. She did not continue to increase her cultivation level, but instead worked hard to strengthen her foundation. After all, she had relied on alchemical pills to increase her cultivation level, and if she continued to be greedy, it would cause her foundation to become unstable, and she would not be able to reach a higher tier in the future. Ling Han had also taught her a set of 4 seasons sword technique. This was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, and probably even the Lu clan would not be able to obtain it. Perhaps only the imperial family would be able to obtain it. Thus, after Lu Yutong had broken through the day before yesterday, she had been studying the secrets of the 4 seasons sword technique for the past 2 days. If there was anything she did not understand, she would ask Ling Han for guidance. Thus, her power had increased very quickly. An elite warrior of gushing spring tier asking for guidance on a martial arts technique of element gathering tier sounded extremely absurd, but Lu Yutong and Li Xichan felt that it was only natural, and there was nothing out of place about it. Ling Han was too much of a monster. If he was said to be able to use a heaven-grade martial arts technique now, the 2 girls would probably only make an sound, and then accept reality. Li Xichan had also advanced from the 3rd layer of element gathering tier to the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Most alchemists were alchemists, and had always relied on alchemical pills to forcibly increase their cultivation level. Naturally, her body had a very strong resistance to alchemical pills. Thankfully, her cultivation level was still low, after all, so this resistance to alchemical pills was not very strong. Thus, she had also advanced a small tier. Meanwhile, Ling Han had broken through to the 6th layer of element gathering tier. His cultivation level was still very low, but in terms of battle prowess, it was extremely terrifying. 5 elements origin nuclei, 6 flashes of sword chi, indestructible heaven scroll, body of dead tree, all these added together caused his attack power to soar to 15 stars, and his defense was even stronger. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it could reach 20 stars. It's still not enough. Ling Han shook his head. Only by breaking through to gushing spring tier would he be able to use black-grade martial arts techniques, and the increase in battle prowess from black-grade martial arts techniques was definitely not something that yellow-grade martial arts techniques could compare with. He was sitting on a mountain of treasures, but could only sigh in vain. This kind of feeling made him very displeased. Lu Yutong, however, rolled her eyes at him. This guy had only been in the 2nd layer of body refining tier half a year ago, but now he had already reached the 6th layer of element gathering tier, and he still complained that it was too slow. How were others supposed to live with him? They walked out of the tent and met up with the others. Yutong, so you've arrived long ago. A man immediately walked up to Lu Yutong when he saw her. It was Wu Bo Jian. When Lu Yutong saw him, she did not say another word, but directly drew her sword and thrust it forward. That day, in order to find her, Wu Bo had come to the Ling clan residence to cause a ruckus, killing and injuring quite a number of people, causing her to feel guilty all this time. Now, it could be said that they had met again, and her eyes were burning with anger. How could she possibly hold herself back? Naturally, she attacked at the first instant. What? When Lu Yutong made her move, Wu Bo's expression immediately changed. 2nd layer of gushing spring tier, she was actually in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. In all honesty, when he had seen Lu Yutong in Grey Cloud Town previously, she had only just broken through to gushing spring tier. But only half a month had passed, and she had already reached the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. This could no longer be described as a genius, could it? Take him for example. He had also received the full support of the clan, but now he was still in the peak period of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. He would need at least another month before he could break through to gushing spring tier, but this was already something that had been greatly praised by the clan, and had been praised as a rare talent. But compared to Lu Yutong, he was completely an idiot. Under the furious attacks of an elite in the second layer of gushing spring tier, how could Wu Bo dare to be the slightest bit careless? He hurriedly drew his sword as well. At this time, if he held back even a little bit, he could very well lose. If he lost to the woman he was pursuing, then would he still have the face to see Lu Yutong in the future? Ding, 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 the two swords continuously clashed, and intense sparks flew. Logically speaking, an elite in the second layer of gushing spring tier should be able to crush an elite in the first layer, but Lu Yutong had just broken through, after all. Moreover, she had broken through with the help of alchemical pills, so her foundation was not stable, which naturally affected her battle prowess. As for Wu Bo, though the increase in his cultivation level could not be separated from the help of alchemical pills, he had been stuck at the peak period of the first layer for a very long time, after all. Naturally, he had long since solidified his foundation. Thus, in this exchange, the battle prowess that the two of them displayed was about the same, and it was difficult to determine who was stronger in a short period of time. Isn't this the pearl of the Lu clan? How could she be so strong? That's right, I remember that half a year ago, she was only in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. Logically speaking, she would need at least 2 years to break through to gushing spring tier, but now she's actually already in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. This is practically unimaginable. TSK, this delicate flower is really getting harder and harder to pluck. However, she's also becoming more and more likable. With such talent, TSK, this woman is mine. Bullshit, you think you're worthy? The surrounding people were all discussing fervently. They were either from the imperial family or from the other 8 great clans, and the power of every single one of them was no weaker than the Lu clan. Moreover, being able to be brought here meant that their power and talent were all top-notch, so they were naturally all proud of themselves. Lu Yutong's attacks continued for a long time, but she was unable to take down Yutong, and the fury in her heart grew stronger and stronger. She suddenly flicked her sword, and a powerful sword intent circulated around her, and her entire person became extremely solemn. 4 Seasons Sword Technique, Black Grade High-Level Martial Arts Technique. This sword technique was divided into 4 parts, which respectively represented spring, summer, autumn, and winter. In truth, it could be said that it was 4 sets of sword techniques that combined into one sword formation. It would be best if 4 people used it simultaneously, as its power would be even greater. However, it was not impossible for a single person to use it at the same time. This required an extremely high level of control over the sword. One move after another, summer followed spring, autumn followed summer, forming a cycle of the 4 seasons, which was similarly powerful. Lu Yutong had only learned a few moves of the spring rain sword technique, so she naturally could not link the 4 seasons together to form the sword intense of spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, and winter snow. However, a black grade high-level martial arts technique was still a black grade high-level martial arts technique after all. Just one move alone was already extremely powerful. Shua, the sword flashed coldly, and there were actually raindrops floating in the air, dancing along with the sword moves. It was a marvelous sight. The beauty was like a painting, and the sword moves were like the scenery, causing everyone to feel intoxicated. Even if there were some people who had set their hearts on the path of martial arts, they could not help but feel their hearts waver, intoxicated by Lu Yutong's elegance. The beauty was like jade, and the sword was like a rainbow, causing many people to want to recite poems and sing. One word, too beautiful, is even more refreshing. Chapter 96. Alright. The 2 old men nodded at the same time. They were friends of many years, after all, and though they argued fiercely before, they didn't want to damage their friendship. This was a solution to the problem. Here, this is my alchemy department's token. In the future, you can enter the alchemy department with this token. Wu Songlin handed an iron token to Ling Han. Old man Wu, this brat just came to the academy to report today. I'll take him to the martial arts department to register and arrange his accommodation, Lian Guangzhu said as he pulled Ling Han and ran. Lian Guangzhu dragged Ling Han and ran quite a distance before stopping and saying to the teacher, "Why did you let this brat run to old man Wu's place?" The teacher was very innocent. How would he know that Ling Han loved to run so much, running out of sight in just a short while? But he didn't dare to talk back to the headmaster, so he could only lower his head and admit his mistake. Thankfully, Lian Guangzhu was just venting his displeasure, and didn't really blame him. Good brat, only in the 4th layer of Pali and defeated Qi Yongyi. His battle prowess should be about 12 stars, surpassing his tier by a whole 8 stars. Even that brat can't compare. Lian Guangzhu's eyes lit up as he mumbled, such a genius of martial art, how can he waste his time on alchemy? If Wu Songlin heard this, with his understanding of Lian Guangzhu, he would definitely guess that the old man was thinking of something. Arrange a remote residence for him, also, arrange a teacher without disciples for him. Don't let old man Wu find him, as expected, he was two-faced. The teacher couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat, and nodded hesitantly. This was the headmaster, so he obviously had to listen to him. But Wu Songlin was also the headmaster of the alchemy department, and a black-grade high-level alchemist at that. In Rain Country, his status was only below that of the Rain Emperor. If Wu Songlin blamed him, he could bear it. Lian Guangzhu naturally realized and said, "After you finish this, go and rest for half a year. Your monthly salary will be paid as usual." When the teacher heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. This way, he could avoid the limelight and also get a free salary, which was naturally the best. Which teacher should I look for? After Lian Guangzhu left, the teacher thought hard. "Ah, I got it." He smiled. Old Mo. Old Mo. Ling Han carried Hunyou in one hand and carried a simple luggage in the other, which was just a change of clothes. The recruitment teacher said, "Old Mo's name is Mo Gao. He used to be a genius of our academy, but I don't know what possessed him, but he actually said that he wanted to create the #1 sword art in the world. As a result, his cultivation stagnated. If it weren't for the dean taking pity on him and accepting him as a teacher in the academy, sigh, anyway, the dean will teach you in person, so you don't have to worry about old Mo's cultivation." Ling Han was brought to an extremely remote place by the recruitment teacher. There were only a few scattered courtyards here and it was really run down. The weeds on the side of the road had grown to waist height. It was likely that no one had lived here for a long time. Bang, bang, bang. The teacher went up to knock on the door. After a while, a voice came from inside. "Who is it?" "Old Mo, it's me," the recruitment teacher said. The two of them should be very familiar with each other. The door opened, and a man of medium build walked out. He should be less than 40 years old, but his face was covered with a beard. His hair was disheveled, and he was slovenly. He looked like a man in his 60s or 70s. "What's the matter?" "If there's nothing else, I'll go practice the sword," the man said. He was obviously Mo Gao. "I've brought you a student." The recruitment teacher pointed at Ling Han, and said, "He's called Ling Han." "Alright, I've brought him here, I'll be leaving now." His butt was on fire, and he broke into a run, afraid that Wu Songlin would catch up to him. Otherwise, he would be in a difficult position. Ling Han looked at Mo Gao, and Mo Gao looked at Ling Han. For a moment, neither of them spoke. After a while, Mo Gao nodded, and said, "Since I'm a teacher here, I can't refuse the mission given by the academy. In the future, you can practice the sword with me." "Okay." Ling Han did not mind. The courtyards nearby are all empty, so you can find one to stay in. Mo Gao turned and walked back. "I won't close this door. In the future, you can come in by yourself, but do not disturb me when I'm practicing the sword." Ling Han shrugged, and brought Hunyou to choose a place to stay. Needless to say, the courtyards here were all in tatters, and dust had accumulated all over the ground. He chose a slightly better courtyard, and began to clean it up. It had to be able to accommodate someone, right? Hunyo was also helping, but she naturally only made things worse. She flopped around, causing dust to fill the air, and her little face to look like a dirty cat. Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly. After busying himself for most of the day, he had at least tidied up a clean room. Ling Han did not immediately go to find Lu Yutong, as he trusted that she would take good care of Ling Zixian. "Is anyone there?" A voice came from the door. Ling Han walked over, and saw a teenager pushing a small cart. Inside was a bag of rice, some dried meat and vegetables. "Meat, meat, meat." Hunyo's eyes immediately lit up, and with a leap, she pounced over, scaring the teenager so much that he fell on his butt. This was to deliver rations, and in the future, he would have to cook his own meals. Ling Han smiled, and walked over to pull the teenager up. He said, "Is this food for a few days?" 10 days, the teenager said. 10 days later, I'll deliver rations again. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "Not enough, 1 day is more like it." 1 day. The teenager was shocked, and looked Ling Han up and down. He did not think that Ling Han would have such a big appetite. "It's fine, just send it over." "Money is not a problem," Ling Han said with a smile. "The academy did not set a limit on how much you can eat, but can you really finish it?" The teenager did not dare to believe it. Ling Han did not explain. Actually, the one who could eat wasn't him, but Hunyo. After the teenager unloaded the food from the cart, he pushed the cart and left. Hunyo immediately jumped around Ling Han, looking impatient. "Don't rush, it's not night yet," Ling Han said with a smile. Hunyo was instantly displeased, and pouted, baring her teeth at Ling Han. Ling Han laughed, and said, "We won't cook today. Let's go stroll around the city. We have to buy new blankets and other things, and prepare a few more clothes. After strolling, we'll go eat. Meat, 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 meat." Hearing the word eat, the little girl immediately started jumping again, her displeasure completely swept away. Ling Han brought the little girl out. He had already applied to Lian Guangzhu that the little girl could stay with him in the future. Otherwise, if she were to stay outside the academy, he really did not know who would be able to take care of her. He held Hunyo's hand, letting the little girl get more used to walking on 2 legs, and not always thinking of crawling on the ground. "Come quickly, Zhu Wujiu is challenging Nangong Ji." They had not even walked out of the academy when they heard a student rushing around, looking extremely excited. Chapter 97. Ling Han couldn't help but be tempted, and followed the crowd. There were more and more people, all discussing the battle between Zhu Wujiu and Nangong Ji, allowing Ling Han to quickly understand the two's information. Zhu Wujiu and Nangong Ji were both normal disciples of the academy, but Nangong Ji's ability ranked in the top 10, and he was qualified to challenge for the position of true disciple at the end of the year. Zhu Wujiu was slightly inferior, but his ability ranked in the top 20 among normal disciples, which was quite good. Why is Zhu Wujiu still fighting to the death with Nangong Ji? It can't be helped. Who asked senior brother Nangong to abandon senior sister Han Wan to save his own life when he was training? Senior sister Han Wan was Zhu Wujiu's lover, so how could he not go crazy? I heard that senior sister Zhu Wan was actually killed by senior brother Nangong. She was hit by his sword, so she fell behind and was forced to fight to the death with the silver light beast, buying time for senior brother Nangong to escape. Shoo, don't say such things. Be careful, Nangong Ji won't make trouble for you. He's the 5th young master of the Nangong clan, and his 3rd brother, Nangong Xing, is a true disciple with the cultivation of the 3rd spring of the gushing spring tier. But Zhu Wujiu is really infatuated. He obviously knows that the Nangong clan is not to be trifled with, but he still challenges Nangong Ji to a bloody battle every year. Last year, he was severely wounded and almost lost his life. Who would have thought that he'd challenge Nangong Ji again this year? Unfortunately, Zhu Wujiu's talent is not very high, and he only has a low-level Earth-grade spirit base. Moreover, his family is poor, and he can't get any extra training. The gap between him and Nangong Ji will only grow. Someone was talking about the grudge between Zhu Wujiu and Nangong Ji. When Ling Han heard it, he couldn't help but feel a bit curious about Zhu Wujiu. The crowd soon arrived at the academy's training field. There was already one person standing there, and the others very consciously did not step in. In Huyang University, sparring was allowed. As long as both parties agreed, they could fight in the training field. In principle, they would try to be as merciful as possible, but if they really couldn't hold back, they wouldn't be punished too severely. After all, swords had no eyes. However, if they intentionally hurt someone, the academy would severely punish them. For example, if one side had already admitted defeat, fainted, or completely lost the ability to fight, but the other side still continued to attack, this was a forbidden behavior. Ling Han walked towards the man in the training field. He was about 25 or 26 years old and carried a long sword on his back. He was tall and slender, but his looks were not handsome. However, his eyes were very sharp. Ordinary people probably wouldn't dare to look him in the eye. Why isn't Nangong Ji here yet? He was challenged, so of course he would put on airs. By the way, how many times has Zhu Wujiu challenged Nangong Ji? This is the 5th time, right? It's only been 4 years. This guy's willpower is really scary. Every time he gets seriously injured, he almost dies, but he always clenches his teeth and holds on. I can't help but admire him. Everyone spoke as they waited, expressing their sympathy and admiration for Zhu Wujiu. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as he thought to himself, I really didn't expect to meet someone with a special constitution. His body is glowing with a faint silver light, and others said that he didn't die even after being seriously injured 4 times, and that he can quickly recover. This person should be from the Silvermoon clan, right? The Silvermoon clan was born with the Silvermoon Constitution, which was a constitution with powerful recovery abilities. It could be said to be a kind of healing panacea, and it was precisely because of this that the number of people from this clan was pitifully small. They were hunted down and refined into a panacea. I thought that after 10,000 years, this clan had gone extinct. I didn't expect to meet one today. Fine, for the sake of the Silvermoon King, I'll help him out. 10,000 years ago, Ling Han had entered the Silvermoon clan's territory in order to gather medicinal ingredients. He had received the warm hospitality of the Silvermoon King, the Silvermoon clan's leader at the time. However, the Silvermoon clan had been exterminated not long after that. Ling Han's cultivation level was still too low at that time, and he was unable to help them at all. Later on, when he entered the Heaven tier, those villains had also died of old age. That was one of Ling Han's regrets. Ha ha ha, Zhu Wujiu, how many times do you have to fail before you understand that you will never be a match for me? A youth strode over, a powerful aura emanating from his body. 9th layer poly, and at the peak. If he did not have such strength, how could he have been able to sit in the top 10 of the normal disciples? In comparison, Zhu Wujiu was much inferior, only at the 7th layer poly. However, everyone knew that cultivation level did not represent battle prowess. For Zhu Wujiu to be able to rank in the top 20 meant that his battle prowess far exceeded his cultivation level. Enough nonsense, make your move. Zhu Wujiu immediately drew his sword and formed a sword seal. Nangong Ji's face was filled with arrogance. He also formed a sword seal, which meant that both sides had agreed to begin this battle. Xiao, Zhu Wujiu charged out, his sword slashing out, cold light flashing. Nangong Ji did not care at all. He was an expert in the top 10, and compared to him, what was Zhu Wujiu? Ding, 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 ding. The two of them clashed fiercely, and Nangongji clearly had the absolute upper hand. He was extremely relaxed, and he was even mocking Zhu Wujiu, trying to lower Zhu Wujiu's morale. But in truth, he was very wary of Zhu Wujiu. In the previous 4 battles, he had dealt a fatal blow every time. Though Zhu Wujiu would not die on the spot, he would definitely die if the battle dragged on for 2 or 3 days. With Zhu Wujiu's wealth, he would not be able to afford a high-grade healing panacea. But this guy just did not die, and he did not even have a lingering illness. This had happened 4 times in a row, so Nangongji naturally became wary. He had a guilty conscience, and Zhu Wujiu was the only one who still had a relationship with Zhu Wan. As long as Zhu Wujiu did not die, he would not be able to rest easy. This could possibly cause the day when he broke through to Gushing Spring Tier to take forever to come. Thus, he was determined to kill Zhu Wujiu on the spot today. Losing and killing were 2 completely different things, and the difficulty level was completely different. Thus, if he wanted to kill Zhu Wujiu, he would need to create an opportunity to kill him in a single strike. After that, he would be able to say that he could not stop himself. The two of them battled for a while longer, and Nangongji, relying on his stronger abilities, finally found a perfect opportunity. His sword pierced out, and 3 flashes of cold light shot out, piercing straight towards Zhu Wujiu's heart. This was not sword chi, but rather his sword was too fast, so it created 2 afterimages. Earth-grade high-level martial arts technique, shadow dance sword technique. He had used up all his accumulated points to exchange for this martial arts technique, and it was all for the sake of today's battle, to kill Zhu Wujiu. Die, he said in his heart, and activated the strongest move of the shadow dance sword technique, launching a merciless attack. Zhu Wujiu also attacked, and actually shot out 2 flashes of cold light. Could it be that he was also using a fast sword? No. Sword chi. The surrounding people all exclaimed in shock. This was sword chi, the sign of a ruler. Pu. 2 flashes of blood appeared at the same time. Nangongji's sword had pierced into Zhu Wujiu's lower abdomen, and the sword chi that Zhu Wujiu had shot out had also sliced across Nangongji's throat, leaving behind a bloody gash. Nangongji's eyes shone with a cold light, and he immediately drew his sword and stabbed out again. He was going to kill this opponent. Shua, another flash of cold light flashed. Ling Han moved, brandishing his sword to meet Zhu Wujiu's attack. Chapter 98. With a ding, Nangongji was pushed back by the sword. He glared angrily at Ling Han, and said, "Who are you to meddle in other people's business? Do you know that meddling in a battle is a very serious offense?" Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "He has already lost the ability to battle, so this battle is already over. However, if you want to spar with me, I don't mind teaching you a lesson." Nangongji couldn't help but glare angrily. Zhu Wujiu had actually formed a flash of sword chi, and had the bearing of a king. In the future, he might become a great threat to him, and he had originally planned to completely finish off this opponent today. He had never thought that Ling Han would actually interfere. "Brat, meddlesome people never have a good ending," he threatened. Now that he had no chance to kill Zhu Wujiu, his heart was filled with fury. Either go all out and fight, or get lost. "Don't talk so much," Ling Han said disdainfully. Nangongji's face was filled with anger, but he still waved his hand and swaggered off. Previously, when he had exchanged blows with Ling Han, he knew that the latter's ability was not inferior to his, and he had always been careful, not fighting a battle unprepared. Thus, since he could not kill Zhu Wujiu, he might as well leave. However, with his character, he would definitely not let this matter rest. He would first investigate Ling Han's background, and then decide what to do next. Who is this guy, actually fighting with Nangongji? He should be this year's new student. His aura is only at the 5th layer of Pali, and he actually managed to scare Nangong Ji away. How rare. However, the Nangong clan is not to be trifled with, and Nangong Xing is a true disciple of the academy. Forget it, forget it. Let's not get involved with him, lest we bring trouble to ourselves. Everyone discussed animatedly, and soon left the martial arts field. Zhu Wujiu slowly got up. The physique of the silver light race was really not for show. After suffering such a heavy injury, he had recovered a lot in just a short while. Of course, the healing effect was completely incomparable to that of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Firstly, the level of the indestructible Heaven Scroll was too high, and secondly, Zhu Wujiu's ability was too weak, and he was completely unable to unleash the true might of his physique. Why are you helping me? Zhu Wujiu asked. Aren't you afraid of offending the Nangong family? When I see injustice on the road, I draw my sword to help. Can't I? Ling Han smiled. I don't believe that there are still people as naive as you. Zhu Wujiu shook his head. However, I was born poor. You won't be able to get any benefits from me. I advise you not to waste your energy. In that case, Ling Han thought for a moment, you can be my subordinate. I'll definitely repay you for your help today. Zhu Wujiu turned to leave, obviously unwilling to agree to be Ling Han's subordinate. Those who could enter Huyang University could be called geniuses. How could they be willing to be inferior to others? Ling Han didn't chase after him. He just said leisurely, you don't want revenge anymore. Zhu Wujiu immediately stopped and slowed down. I can teach you. Ling Han continued, in half a year, I'll definitely help you surpass Nangong Ji and let you take revenge with your own hands. Zhu Wujiu suddenly turned around and said, really? You already said that you were born poor. What benefits would I get from lying to you? Ling Han smiled. Zhu Wujiu hesitated for a moment, then said, all right, I agree to be your follower. If you can't help me surpass Nangong Ji in half a year, then I'll repay you for your help. If possible, I'll sell my life to you in the future. This guy really valued relationships. Just being Ling Han's follower wasn't a bad thing for him. On the contrary, it was a great opportunity. If it weren't for the fact that Ling Han had a friendship with the Silver Moon King, he definitely wouldn't have gone through all this trouble. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll teach you a technique. In the future, you'll change to this technique. He lowered his voice and taught Zhu Wujiu a technique called the Silver Moon Technique. That's right, this technique was tailor-made for the people of the Silver Moon clan. In the past, the Silver Moon clan was destroyed, and after Ling Han's cultivation reached a certain level, he searched everywhere for the survivors of the Silver Moon clan. He didn't find them, but he obtained the clan guarding technique of the Silver Moon clan, which was this Silver Moon technique. His memory was superb, and he only flipped through it once before memorizing it completely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to take it out now. The Silver Moon technique paired with the people of the Silver Moon clan could completely unleash the power of Zhu Wujiu's physique, increasing his battle prowess by at least 1 star. The level of the Silver Moon technique was also Earth grade high level, enough for Zhu Wujiu to quickly catch up to Nangong Ji in terms of cultivation level. Silver Moon physique and sword chi, with these two added together, if Zhu Wujiu still couldn't defeat Nangong Ji, then he was too useless. Zhu Wujiu didn't know that this was an Earth grade high level technique, nor did he know that it could completely unleash the power of his physique. After asking for Ling Han's name and where he lived, he left in a daze. After all, he was injured and needed to recuperate. Little. Hunyo tugged at Ling Han's sleeve in dissatisfaction. All right, let's go eat some meat, Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Han. Brother Ling. He heard shouts coming from afar. Ling Han looked over and saw that it was Qi Yongyi, Jin Wuji, Qi Yongyi, and Li Dongyu, his 4 old friends from De Yuan City. Brother Ling, you're really late. Today, you must punish yourself by drinking 3 cups of wine, Bailey Tingyun said. How can 3 cups be enough? At least 10 cups. Li Dongyu also joined in the fun. Meat, meat, meat. Hunyo jumped up and down. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, let's go, please. It's my treat today. We won't go home until we're drunk. We won't leave until we're drunk. Chi Yong-yi and the others all laughed. 5 adults and 1 child left the academy and found a restaurant to drink. However, Chi Yong-yi and the others soon discovered to their dismay that as long as a dish was served, as long as there was meat, it would be instantly annihilated by Hunyo. It was like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. Thus, they also joined in the fight for food. But when it came to eating, who could compete with Hunyo? The little girl did not use chopsticks, so after a single slap, who would be able to bear to eat? Is this little girl's stomach a bottomless pit? Chi Yong-yi and the others were all curious, but even Chi Yong-yi did not recognize her. This little girl was the one from the wrestling ring in Yuan City. After all, Hunyo's hair was a mess at that time, and her entire body was dirty. Unlike now, though she was still very wild, she was as delicate as a porcelain doll. I really envy Brother Ling. You've become a true disciple the moment you enter the academy, and can obtain countless cultivation resources, Li Dongyu said ruefully. Chi Yong-yi nodded, and said, the gap between a true disciple and a normal disciple is really too big. Originally, the gap between me and Feng Yan was not very big, but now, AI, 4th Prince, at least you still have the support of the royal house of De Yuan, which is much better than us, Jin Wuji immediately said. That's right, the royal house of De Yuan has more resources than the 4 of us combined. If you still cry about being poor, then how are we supposed to live? Bailey Tingyun also called out. Ling Han, I heard that you have some grudges with Feng Luo. Now that he has also entered the academy, you have to be careful of him inviting Feng Yan to deal with you, Chi Yong-yi suddenly said. Chapter 99. Is there anyone else who is unconvinced? Ling Han stopped, and asked the others with a slight smile. Everyone hurriedly shook their heads. This guy was too fierce. Unless one was in gushing spring tear, there was no one who had the right to exchange blows with him. The few gushing spring tear martial artists humphed. They were not afraid of Ling Han, but were rather wary of Lu Yutong. Now, this girl had drawn her sword and was standing guard by Ling Han's side, so no one dared to act rashly. Most importantly, they were not in the mood to bicker with Ling Han. That stock of spiritual medicine had run into that mysterious area, and the most important thing now was to figure out how to get it out. More and more people surged over, completely surrounding the area. This could possibly be the central area of the whole underground space. It formed a circle, and the area it occupied was quite large. Most importantly, that pitch-black area swallowed all light, as if it was a solid object that could block one's line of sight. If one stood at one end, they would not be able to see the other end. Thankfully, there were enough people who had entered, and they could just barely surround this area. At least, if that stock of spiritual medicine ran out, they would be able to discover it immediately. What do we do now? After surrounding the area, everyone was in a dilemma. Trap it, I don't believe it won't come out, someone said. Are you stupid? That's a stalk of grass in the first place, and it can completely take root in there for a few years or even a few hundred years. But what about us? At most 3 days, we have to leave, someone scolded. That's true, that person said sheepishly. Everyone frowned. That was definitely a stock of spiritual medicine, and had even reached the level of the legendary spiritual medicine, yet they could only stare at it. This practically drove them crazy. Someone went out to contact the old monsters outside, hoping that they could have some sort of solution. The others stood guard here. Ling Han slowly approached that invisible wall. He stretched out his hand to sense it. What a familiar feeling. A sliver of a smile appeared at the corners of Ling Han's lips. All those years ago, he had entered many historical sites, and had seen many similar situations. This was also the reason why he had been warned in advance. This was not some kind of wall, but rather a kind of aura that was above the heaven tier. If he still had the cultivation level of the heaven tier, then with his research on this kind of aura, he could do his best to break through and let himself pass. But now, he was completely unqualified to do so. Could it be that he had no choice but to use that? Ling Han took out that broken saber. This was his disciple's treasured saber, and could possibly be the only relic that could be found now. If he fully released the remaining might of the spirit tool, he should be able to barely activate the power of the heaven tier. But the problem was, if he released it like that, this treasured saber would be completely destroyed. Ling Han hesitated, and there was still another problem. This saber could only release it once, so how was he going to come out after he entered? But after only an instant, he made up his mind. He was going to enter. Because there was not only a godly medicine inside, but also the secret of the great battle of the past. He wanted to know why. Moreover, if there really was the remains of a shattering void tier elite inside that formed this aura, then he might have a way to break through. You two, cover for me, Ling Han said to Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan. Because this area was very big, everyone stood about 10 meters apart from each other, surrounding this area. Thus, Ling Han stood in the middle of the two girls, and if the people on the two sides did not pay attention, it would be very difficult for them to notice him. The two girls did not know what he wanted to do, but they both nodded. They knew that this guy had abilities that normal people did not have. Ling Han began to awaken the treasured saber. Jiang Yufeng's martial intent was inherited from him, and although he was still very weak now, they were of the same lineage. Under the guidance of his divine sense, the martial intent within the treasured saber also began to awaken. Wang, the seals on the treasured saber lit up one by one, and were extremely bright. But this was the final flash, and very soon, it would completely return to normal. Ling Han did not have the slightest bit of hesitation, and used the treasured saber to break through the aura, opening a path for himself. Even so, his nerves were still extremely tense, and the treasured saber in his hand trembled like a swimming fish. His figure also swayed, and he walked out a zigzag path. His figure disappeared into the dark area in an instant, never to be seen again. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were both at a loss for words. They exchanged a look, and could see the deep shock in each other's eyes, as well as a deep sense of respect. This young man, this man, what else could he not do? They very quickly withdrew their gazes and gathered their spirits, covering for Ling Han to prevent others from discovering his disappearance. Otherwise, if Ling Han really obtained some kind of treasure, with his current abilities, he would definitely not be able to keep it. Ling Han's whole body was covered with sweat. This chi field was filled with danger at every step. All those years ago, when he was still a powerful warrior of heaven tier, he would only need to take one wrong step to be severely injured. And with his current cultivation level of the 6th layer of element gathering tier, this was practically like trying to pull a chestnut out of the fire. The slightest mistake would mean that he would be smashed into smithereens, and he would definitely not have a second chance. But this caused him to become even more excited. His expression became extremely focused, and his eyes became incomparably bright. There was usually no difference between a genius and a madman. In his last life, he had focused on alchemy, and the moment he began to concoct pills, he would be like a madman. But in this life, he had placed his focus on martial arts, and similarly had a crazy side to him. It was just that he had not had the chance to show it before. This kind of heavy danger naturally caused his whole body to shiver, but it also made him even more excited. Hovering between life and death made him feel the meaning of life, and his divine sense surged like the waves of the sea. He even had a feeling that perhaps he could train his divine sense in this kind of dangerous place. The treasured saber's light began to flicker, and Ling Han was shocked. The state of this saber's damage had exceeded his imagination. It had actually only lasted for this long, and it was about to collapse. Although he liked to take risks, taking risks and throwing away one's life were two different things. He hurriedly increased his speed. Because he had to calculate the changes in the aura field, his spirit was also highly focused, and it was also highly exhausting. His whole body's sweat flowed down like water, instantly drenching his clothes, and even leaving a water stain under his feet. Yet he did not feel it at all. His eyes were bright, and he continued to advance. Wang, the treasured saber flickered one last time, and all the symbols disappeared at the same time, shattering one after another. This represented that the martial intent within the saber had been completely annihilated. Ling Han took a step and charged out. He had finally walked out of the area that had been sealed off by the aura field. Light once again appeared in front of him. This was an area that had a circumference of only 30 meters. In the center, there was a skeleton sitting cross-legged on the ground, and that stalk of godly medicine was doing its best to dig its roots into the soil. However, the ground here seemed to be especially sturdy. After so much time had passed, this stalk of godly medicine had actually only dug its roots halfway into the ground. Ling Han's eyes lit up, and he quietly walked towards this stalk of godly medicine. He did not know if there was a positive side to godly medicine, but it was obvious that this stalk of godly medicine had not discovered him yet. 10 steps, 8 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps, Ling Han suddenly leaped out, and stretched out a hand to grab that stalk of godly medicine.